Chapter 161. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. In the afternoon, because of the commotion caused by Long Straw, Luaccio, who was not in the mood to go out, stayed in the club and read books for the whole afternoon. About before dinner in the evening, a new guest came to the club. An old woman in ragged clothes, carrying a large gray cloth bag and holding a thin bamboo pole. At first glance, Luaccio looked a bit like a scavenger, but also like a wanderer. Her face was full of wind and frost and wrinkles, and her slightly hunched body looked very thin. "Yee, what's for dinner today?" "Fried duck breast with fragrant orange juice, French corn, and mushroom soup, small bread." Luaccio nodded and said, "The guest's teeth are not good. Get some soup and small bread." Of course, this conversation happened when the old woman was still standing in front of the door, and when the wind chime had just sounded. Seeing that the old woman had trouble walking, Luaccio walked forward and helped her sit down. I don't have money." The old woman's voice was a little uneasy. She did not even think about spending money in this place. Although she could not see clearly what this place was for, she could still see that the person who helped her was dressed very neatly. And he was also very polite. Could it be a very high-class place? "Auntie, don't worry, we don't take money here." He felt that calling her auntie was more in line with the old woman's world. Luaccio sat in front of the auntie. Yui moved quickly. At this moment, she had already used the dining car to push out a bowl of soup and a small basket of bread in front of the auntie. Her eyes could not see clearly, but her nose was still there. The auntie smelled a strong fragrance. She could not remember how long it had been since she smelled such a fragrance that made her mouth salivate. Probably many years ago, during the New Year, there was a table of reunion dinner. "What is this?" the auntie could not help but ask. Yui said softly, "Auntie, this is a thick soup made with truffles and corn. The bread was bought outside, but it was just baked today." This is all for me?" the aunt said in disbelief. I can't afford it." "Auntie, don't worry. Our boss invited you to eat." Yui smiled and said, "If it's not enough, there's more inside." "Big sister, big brother, thank you." The aunt thanked them gratefully. Perhaps he was really hungry. Although there were still a few steamed buns in the cloth bag, the aroma of the soup in front of her was irresistible. Luaccio asked for a glass of water and watched the old woman drink the soup and bite the bread. After she finished all the food in front of her, the aunt said uneasily, "Big brother, I really don't have any money. I'm wandering around alone and can't go home. Nothing, just to entertain the guest." Luaccio put down the glass and put his hand on the back of the aunt's hand on the table. In just an instant, the auntie withdrew her hand in horror, because in just a moment she understood what kind of place she was in. With things other than money, one could buy anything they wanted as long as they could afford to pay the price. But it was still unbelievable. At this time, Luaccio waved his hand in front of the auntie's eyes and gently wiped them away. The cloudy eyeballs suddenly became clear. Feeling the clear sight that was already far away, the aunt touched her eyes with trembling hands. Her eyes suddenly became moist. My eyes, how could it be incredible? Incredible. She clearly saw the beautiful servant girl and the well-dressed club boss. Since she regained her sight, she didn't panic even when she saw the strange clothes of the club boss. The aunt looked at her hands subconsciously. It turned out that they were so old and rough. There was no dirt in the palm lines like a black line. However, her sight slowly became blurred again, as if all this was just a flash in the pan. My eyes. "It's an experience," Luaccio said softly, "to let you know that we have the ability to do something you can't imagine. This is a place where people who need it can come." So, he stood up and stood in front of the auntie. He placed his hands in front of his chest and bowed slightly. "Esteemed guest, may I ask if you need anything?" The aunt almost didn't hesitate at this time. She quickly took out a flyer from the cloth bag and put on the table. She smoothed the wrinkled flyer again and again with both hands, as if she was afraid of any wrinkles and corners. He, my son, can you help me find him? 20 years. He's been kidnapped for 20 years. I beg of you, help me find him," the aunt said, holding the table and kneeling on the ground, Big brother. No, you are immortals. I'm kowtowing to you here. I beg you, help me find my son. Luocio glanced at Yi. The sensible servant girl bent down to help the aunt up and sat back on a chair. Luocio said, Aunt, your name is Yongping. Your son disappeared 20 years ago. You have been looking for him for 20 years from your hometown in Hebei to the south. You only came home 3 times in 20 years. The last time was 7 years ago. You have cataracts and your body is not as good as before. Last year, you fell down on the roadside and were sent to the hospital by a kind person. The doctor said you had tuberculosis, right? Yes, yes. The aunt kept nodding. There's so many people. If you want to find your son with only an old childhood photo, I'm afraid you can't find him in the rest of your time. This body with thousands of holes might not survive this year. I just want to find my son back. Yang Ping raised her head. In the past 20 years, there are many people like me who are looking for their sons and daughters. We met on the road. When we talked about our children, we couldn't help crying for a whole night. I saw too many desperate people give up. But I know, even if it's only a little chance, we are willing to do anything. So, no matter what I have to do, I just want to find my son back. I see. Luocio nodded. When the guest said her original intention, the old parchment had been unfolded in front of her. The only thing that the aunt could offer that could meet this requirement was this old and lonely soul. The melodious sound of a violin came from the small courtyard of a duplex apartment in the residential area. Even the fence and trees couldn't hurt the melodious sound. After dinner, Fong Jipping practiced playing the zither in his yard as usual. Suddenly, the phone rang. Fong Jipping put down the violin in his hand, glancing at the caller ID and then at Fong Ye. Fong Ruchong was now sitting on the sofa, reading the newspaper. Fong Jipping walked away, out of Fong Ruchong's sight. Then he picked up the phone, chatting with the girl on the other side of the phone. They had known each other for about a year at a concert. She was not his audience, but just a staff member of the concert hall. She was an ordinary girl who worked hard for her life. They shouldn't have any connection, but the string in Fong Jipping's heart was suddenly stirred. He had been dating the girl for more than half a year behind his family's back. Are you practicing the violin again? Yes. Have you got off work? Just got off. But I have a part-time job in a convenience store. Didn't I tell you not to work so hard? No way. If I don't work hard, I won't have enough money to go to Belgium next month to watch your competition. I want to sit in the first row as your audience. I told you, I'll arrange it for you. We've reached an agreement. You only need to pay for my admission ticket. I have to rely on my own efforts to pay for the travel expenses. Skip this topic, or I'll be angry. Okay. Fong Jipping shook his head helplessly, looking at the clear summer night sky, talking with the girl about some interesting things, hoping she wouldn't feel bored on the way. Outside the fence, Yang Ping, who was holding Luocio's arm, could only see a vague figure by the light in the room, who seemed to be talking. Her eyes weren't good, but her ears could hear more things these years. The aunt suddenly tightened her grip on Luocio's arm. Is he really my son? Is he talking? Chapter 162. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second /small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Fong Jipping had the habit of running late. Of course, it started half a year ago. Of course, exercising was just an excuse. More importantly, it was to be able to chat more freely with the girl he liked. He felt that it was ridiculous that many rich families would dress up their daughters and then marry into a better family. But Fong Jipping knew that it was also applicable to him. He knew that his father, Fong Ruchong, was a very greedy person since a long time ago. Fong Ruchong had been building his reputation for decades. Now he had a reputation, but he didn't have enough wealth. Now Fong Ruchong planned to make his son a famous violinist, probably for a good marriage in the future. Was snobbish guy. But Fong Jipping had told himself a long time ago that he didn't seem to be qualified to comment on Fong Ruchong. He always found various excuses for himself, and never had the courage to introduce the hard-working girl to his family. Well, be careful. Don't be too tired from work. After hanging up the call with his girlfriend, Fong Jipping walked on the road of the community alone. He laughed self-deprecatingly, but secretly made up his mind. After he became famous, he He must bring this hard-working girl into his family. He didn't want to be a puppet anymore. Dong 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 dong. Suddenly, Fong Jipping heard some sounds. These sounds were so familiar. He suddenly stopped and chased after the voice that was buried in the depths of his memories. He found the source of this sound not far from his house. Under the streetlight, there was a bent figure who should be an ant, like a scavenger. The dong-dong sound came from a small rattle drum in the ant's hand. The sound made by the shaking rattle drum made Fong Jipping walk forward subconsciously. Under the streetlight, his eyes were almost attracted by this rattle drum. In his memory, he also had such a rattle drum. Fong Jipping recovered from his meditation, finding that the ant holding the rattle drum was staring at him without blinking. The white turbid eyes looked scary under the streetlight at night, and the wrinkles on her face seemed to be able to hide the shadows. He stepped back subconsciously. At this moment, the ant called out cautiously, "Baby tiger." Fong Jipping's face slightly changed, blurting out, "How do you know this name?" "Hua." The ant suddenly stepped forward excitedly, grabbing Fong Jipping's hand, saying in a hoarse voice, "Hua, it's me. I'm your mother." "Mother!" Fong Jipping suddenly quivered, pushing the ant's hand away, saying hurriedly, "I don't know what you're talking about." "Hua, I'm really your mother. Have you forgotten? When you were young, you loved to eat the popsicles sold at the village entranced the most. Whenever summer came, you would yell about wanting to eat them. As for you, there was one time when you yelled and rolled on the ground. The back of your head even hit a rock and left a scar. Touch the back of your head. Hua, I've been looking for you for so many years. Finally, I found you." Fong Jipping suddenly took a deep breath, stepping back. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not Hua, and I don't know you. If you want to find your son, go somewhere else." Saying this, Fong Jipping turned around and walked away quickly. The ant behind him seemed to be very nervous and anxious, hurriedly following him. But she couldn't walk fast because of her old illness. She staggered and fell to the ground after a few steps. Hearing the painful groan, Fong Jipping turned back subconsciously. He looked at the ant sitting on the ground, gritting his teeth, walking over quickly, taking out his wallet and taking out all the cash, putting in the ant's hand. "Go away, I'm really not your son." Before the ant could speak, Fong Jipping turned around and left quickly. "Hua, Hua, Hua." He didn't stop. Only the cold street lamp accompanied her. Just like the past 20 years, she sat alone and helpless on the road again. The ant lowered her head, holding the rattle drum in her hand, sobbing in a low voice. "Do you want to drink water? I remember you only drank some soup and didn't drink any water." Under the street lamp, Luochio unscrewed the bottle for the ant and gave it to her hand. The ant trembled as she held the water bottle. She didn't say anything and just sat there quietly. After a long time, the ant's emotions seemed to have calmed down. She raised her head and an ugly smile appeared on her sad face. "Big brother, thank you. I really found my son. He's really Hua." He didn't admit it. "I know it's him." He didn't intend to admit it. Luochio, who was observing aside, naturally saw Fong Jipping's reaction. The ant smiled bitterly. "Big brother, for so many years, I've been thinking, if one day I find my son, what should I say to him? I think about it every day and night. I think about it when I'm eating. I think about it when I'm having a fever. I think about it when I'm dreaming. Those kidnappers deserve to be hacked to death, but I deserve to die even more." The woman said with tears in her eyes, "Hua must hate me. That year, if I didn't like to gamble and forget everything when I started gambling, how could I have lost him? I still remember that day. I threw myself into the stall, thinking it would be fine in my own village if I thought it was troublesome to leave him outside. I know, he must hate me, such a young child was kidnapped." The ant cried bitterly. "I deserve to die. I deserve to die all these years. My heart is like being cut by a knife day by day. If he doesn't admit me, I can't blame him." Luochio glanced at the corner of the path. A shadow flashed by. He knew Fong Jipping hadn't gone far. He was just hiding. Luochio didn't intend to point it out, but now he helped the ant up from the ground. "Let's call it a night. Ant, I'll find a place for you to rest." The ant was stunned. "Big brother, why are you still helping me? You found my son." Luochio said indifferently, We've found him, but not his heart. Our work is not finished. Sub-editor Rin carried 2 boxes of gluten and carrots, as well as several bottles of beer, going up the stairs of the old building. Not long after, she rang the doorbell. Yin, Lil Yezi. It's me. Open the door. I'll treat you to supper. After work, she suddenly remembered that Yin was still squatting here to monitor King Kong. Although he had promised not to interfere, but thinking that he was here to deliver supper, this was a form of consolation. But there was no response after she rang the door for a while. Rin Xiling couldn't help being stunned. This guy, has he gone out? Rin Xiling took out her mobile phone. Sub-editor Rin felt that she came here in vain and wasted her feelings. She leaned against the door, planning to call Yi Yin. Unexpectedly, when she leaned down, the door suddenly opened, and Rin Xiling, who was caught off guard, rushed in. The number you have dialed is powered off. Hearing the faint sound of the mobile phone, Rin Xiling got up, rubbing the place where she fell. She touched the switch by the door and turned on the light. Is there a war? However, he saw that the room was in chaos. As for the surveillance equipment, they had all disappeared. Rin Xiling was stunned, subconsciously pulling the door lock, and the marble lock fell down from the door. Chapter 163. Genius 1 second to remember love /go/little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. There are no traces of fighting here. Judging from the lock, you may be in trouble. Sir Ma frowned when he saw the environment in the room. He received a call from Rin Xiling in the evening, so he hurried over. Old Ma, don't you want to think of a way? Ma Howd walked to the window and looked at the situation on the street, suddenly saying, You said he was monitoring the people in the opposite building, right? Yes, he was the bodyguard of Lin Geng, the boss of Heaven's Shadow Entertainment. I don't know the details. Because they were 2 different systems, Rin Xiling could only choose to keep some information. But the 3 of them had a close relationship, so it was unreasonable to say nothing. Ma Hao nodded. Yi Yin is a very outstanding person. He won't let anything happen to him easily. But since this happened here and he can't find him now, we can't rule out that he is in danger. Speaking of this, Ma Hao's face suddenly became serious. I have to tell you something. You'd better calm down. Say it. Rin Xiling was also quite straightforward. Ma Hao took a deep breath and said, I also received the news today. It's from Lyon in France. According to them, Yi Yin was expelled by the Interpol last month, and he was put on the wanted list. They found his exit record and knew that Yi Yin was born here, so they informed us immediately, hoping that we can pay more attention to it. What? Rin Xiling was stunned, saying incredulously, How is that possible? What did Yi Yin do? Ma Hao smiled bitterly and said, If I knew, I wouldn't be so clueless. To be honest, when I heard the news, I directly threw the phone. But they said it was their internal secret. Of course, they have no right to mobilize us. They just want to cooperate. To be honest, before I came here, I've been looking for Yi Yin the whole day. I didn't expect that he might have gone missing. I'll look for him too, Rin Xiling said. If Yi Yin is still in this city, I'll be able to find him. However, Ma Hao said, Don't get involved in this matter. I'm afraid it involves more than what is on the surface. I was a member of the system, and I had Leon's request. It was much easier for me to take action, and it was much more justifiable. Wait for my news. I don't care about other people, but old Ye's business isn't anyone else's business. Rin Xiling said angrily, He's a wanted man. Ma Hao knew that it was impossible for him to persuade the other party, so he could only take a step back and say, Then promise me that we will both look for it. No matter what, if you find it first, you must inform me immediately. Next, I have to be the one to contact him. This matter may cause international problems. You really can't be willful. Rin Xiling nodded. I'm not stupid. I still want to live my own life. I know what to do. Ma Hao also knew that Rin Xiling was a woman of her word, so he let out a sigh of relief. Well, don't let Luoqiu know about this matter. Besides his father, Yi Yin is the person he admires most. I don't want this kid to be unhappy. Do you think I'm stupid? I'm more nervous than you. Let's get out of here first. Ma Hao quickly said, If someone has been here before, they might come again. Don't come up to this house these days. I'll inform you if there's any news. Okay. Fong Jipping returned home with a lot of worries. It should be much later than usual, but at this moment, Fong Ruchong was still sitting in the living room, reading the newspaper. Fong Jipping didn't intend to talk with Fong Ruchong, walking back to his room with his head lowered. Much later than usual. What did you do? Unexpectedly, Fong Ruchong suddenly asked. Fong Jipping turned around, only to find Fong Ruchong was still reading the newspaper. So he said, "Nothing, I just stayed outside for a while, thinking about something." Fong Ruchong didn't raise his head, saying indifferently, "It's good to think about something. You better think clearly. Now, the most important thing for you is the competition. Don't let those unimportant things affect you." "I know." Fong Jipping nodded. "I'll go back to my room first." "Go ahead. Have an early rest." Fong Ruchong continued reading the newspaper. After returning to his room, Fong Jipping was a little agitated. He walked to his wardrobe, taking out a small box from the innermost part of the wardrobe. Opening the box, there was an old rattle drum inside. Fong Jipping took out the small drum, holding it in his hand, staring blankly. Mom, where are you? I'm so scared." "Who was so scared?" "Woo-woo. Shut up. I'll beat you to death." "Shut up, you little brat." "I'm hungry, little bastard. If you don't beg enough money today, don't think about eating. If you don't beg enough tomorrow, I'll break your hand. Just like the one beside you. After breaking his leg, he'll make more money. No, from today on, you're my son, my biological son. Do you understand? I'll give you the best food, the best clothes, and the best education. But there's only one requirement. That is, you can't mention to others that you're adopted by me. Remember, I can give you everything, and I can also take everything back, leaving you with nothing." I know." Fong Jipping held the rattle drum in his hand tightly. The memories that were already blurred and fading away suddenly became clear tonight. Yesterday's scenes replayed in his mind one after another. Why didn't she come out? I shouted until my throat was hoarse. Is gambling more important than my child? Fong Jipping muttered to himself, pinching his eyebrows, sitting on the chair with mixed feelings. Yang Ping's aunt's ID card had even expired. But for the current Luochio, it was not difficult to get a room for the aunt in the hotel. At the age of 13, Fong Jipping won the third place in the National Youth Violin Competition. At the age of 15, at the age of 16, the aunt listened carefully to Luochio's voice. Luochio's words. She heard her son's every past in her heart. She didn't dare to say a word, let alone talk, because she was afraid that once she interjected, she would not only interrupt his words, but also the things she could remember. While listening, the aunt closed her eyes, lying on the bed and falling asleep. In the opinion of Miss Servant Girl, covering the quilt should not be done by her master. So Miss Servant Girl gently lifted the aunt's feet and put them down. At the side, Luochio was opening the big gray cloth bag that Yang Ping always carried with her. A pile of crumpled leaflets, which were not only crumpled, but also wet by the rain. There were several steamed buns in the red plastic bag. One was bitten, the other was sour. A small pot of white rice, a big stainless steel cup, and 3 sets of clothes. 2 were for adults, one was thin, the other was thick. The third was for children. A spoon, a small bottle of medicine with a few pills left, a pair of worn-out cloth shoes. There was also an embroidered purse, which was filled with loose money, a few cents, a few yuan, a piece of 10 yuan. There was a plastic comb with missing teeth and a palm-sized blurry but cracked mirror. The mobile phone was a model from a long time ago, which could not be turned on. Some medical records. A small notebook, which was also wet with water, had many phone numbers and addresses written on it. Chapter 164. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, Go/Small. It provides you with wonderful novels to read. Old Town. Luochio, who hadn't come back for a while, got up early this morning and came to this place. Old Chen's bun shop was not as crowded as usual. Old Chen and his wife were not here. It seemed that the tea here was a little cold. When Luochio came, Chunyu was kneading dough on the bun table alone. A new Annie was hired to serve the customers. Luochio sat back in his usual position. Chunyu stopped after kneading a ball of dough and wiped his sweat. When he saw Luochio had been sitting for about 10 minutes. Chunyu, who had inherited the bun shop, came out with a small teapot with a smile. There was a rolled-up white towel hanging around his neck, just like old Chun. Chunyojio greeted him and sat down. He was quiet at first, but later he talked more and more, talking about things after old Chun passed away. It's amazing. Chunyojio shook his head and sighed. The doctor said that my parents passed away peacefully. They were the kind of people who naturally walked to the end of their lives. I was thinking that when I went home for dinner that night and took my wife and children with me, did my dad already feel it, so he took out the real estate certificate and gave it to me? Speaking of this, Chunyu was particularly sad. At this time, the new aunt brought a basket of freshly steamed buns. Luochio picked up one and broke it open. The fresh meat filling gave off an appetizing aroma. After the white flour evaporated, there was a sense of fullness unique to this old shop. The bun is still here. Luochio took a bite. The taste is still there. Chunyu belonged to the kind of honest people. At this time, he smiled and said, "Yes, my dad only had a generation of repeat customers after a lifetime of business. In the time to come, I will have my own generation." Chunyojio looked at the guest hall, which was far less lively than before, but at least half of the seats were still occupied. With a satisfied smile, he said happily, "2 days ago, my son told me that he would learn how to make steamed buns from me during the summer vacation. Generation after generation, the torch was passed down. It was good that it could be passed down. Big brother Chun, I'll pack 2 baskets." Luochio smiled and said, "It's for my guests." Chunyu said happily, "Don't worry. I guarantee there will be a lot of stuffing." It would take at least an hour to travel from the old town to a hotel in the city with a steaming bun. The reason why the steam was still as hot as when it was first released was naturally because Boss Luo had basically abandoned all means of transportation. The room was very tidy. Even the quilt was folded neatly and placed in the middle of the bed. This room was not checked out, but the grayish-white cloth bag was gone, and so was the bamboo pole. Naturally, the Ani was not here either. Luochio could roughly guess where it was. The car drove out of the gate of the community. Fong Jipping, who was driving, glanced at the rearview mirror, seeing an old woman sitting at the parterre outside the community, rubbing her legs. Seeing that the car didn't drive according to the lane, Fong Ruchong couldn't help frowning. Jipping, concentrate on driving. Fong Jipping turned back, subconsciously driving into the normal lane. "What are you thinking about?" Fong Ruchong couldn't help asking curiously. Fong Jipping said slowly, "Nothing, I was just thinking about the performance." "Well, there are 2 bars that I should be able to do better." Fong Ruchong didn't seem to doubt it. He nodded, closing his eyes and sitting quietly on the co-pilot's seat. After the car left, the Ani stood up while touching the bamboo pole. She had poor eyesight, but at least she could see the position of the security booth at the gate. The Ani walked to the security booth. The security guard inside opened the door and walked out. Probably he couldn't harden his heart to see such an old woman. "Auntie, what are you doing here? You can't enter if you're not a resident." The Ani shook her head. "Big brother, do you hire people here?" The security guard gave a start. Of course, being a security guard was a very boring job. So he started to talk with patience. "Auntie, what kind of job do you think you can find?" "Weeding and sweeping the floor, I can still do it." The aunt said kindly, "I don't want money, and I don't want a place to live. Just let me have a meal here." The security guard shook his head. "I'm sorry, Auntie, I'm not in charge of human affairs. I mean, you look too old and inconvenient, so I don't think we'll hire you." "Big brother, help me. I really need a job, please." Seeing this auntie suddenly kneeling on the ground and begging pitifully, the little security guard's heart was moved, and he couldn't help but feel awkward. "Can you get up first? Alas, I'll ask for you. We do need some cleaning aunties here, but I can't tell if you'll be hired. After all, you do look—" I know. 3 meals a day. No, 2 meals will do. 1 meal will do. I don't want anything else." Maybe she was really hungry? The security guard couldn't help but sigh secretly. He turned back to look at the high-class residential area. The people here were dressed well, but the people outside were not. The world, F***CK the world. "Manager? I'm Xiao Jiang who guards the door." Yes, yes, yes. Here's the thing. I have a fellow who just came out from the countryside. Security guard? No, no, cleaning awning? Well. The security guard in the pavilion looked at the awning outside the pavilion. It wasn't easy for them to make a living outside. 3 meals a day, no accommodation. You said you don't want the salary. In addition, we don't sign a contract. If there's any problem, such as you being injured or something, we won't be responsible. Think about it carefully. Okay. Biani nodded quickly. What was the use of money? Even if she was rich, she could only get 3 meals a day. She knew she didn't have much time. She only wanted to stay far away from him and have a place close to him. It was enough for her to see him secretly every day and know whether he was happy or not. Miss Maid, who was sitting quietly with her hands folded on her legs, suddenly turned her head. A black smoke jumped in from the door, followed by a hoarse voice like that of an old witch. Black soul number 18 greets Miss Yu. Didn't I ask you to keep an eye on Miss Rin? Why did you leave without permission? Miss Maid said unpleasantly. Black soul number 18 hurriedly said, It's like this. Last night, when I was with Miss Rin, Black soul number 18 told her what he heard in the room. That's what happened. Mr. Yin seemed to have a special relationship with the new owner, and Miss Rin and Officer Ma were also worried. I was worried about what might happen later, so I came back to report to you immediately. I see. Yu nodded, looking at Black Soul number 18 expressionlessly. You go back first, I'll deal with it myself. Black Soul number 18 didn't dare to stay any longer, turning into a black smoke and leaving the club. Yu looked at the big stupid clock on the wall, standing up. Chapter 165. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. After another busy day, Ms. Zhang, who was too tired to move, simply asked for a single room in the hotel, intending to have a rest. The invitations for the banquet guests had been sent out, and the layout of the venue was almost complete. The various performers invited to liven things up were basically ready. However, she still hadn't figured out what to give her as a gift to celebrate her grandmother's birthday. I can't shop online, right? But Zhang Qingrui was really browsing online. Of course, she didn't really want to shop online. She just wanted to find some inspiration. Suddenly, her mailbox showed that she had a new email. Zhang Qingrui had several mailboxes, and they were all classified according to who sent them to whom. The email she received was one that she rarely used. It was basically the email she used to contact her good friends. The sender's name was Zhang Qingrui. Ms. Zhang couldn't help being stunned. Although there were some people who knew her mailbox, she couldn't figure out which old friend would do such a boring thing. She opened the email. The first line was a date. This isn't the time when I was in Ulaanbaatar? Zhang Qingrui frowned, reading the rest of the email with confusion. You are Zhang Qingrui. You have 4 bank cards. The passwords are, your first menstrual period was in March when you were 13 years old. You put away the blood-stained clothes as a souvenir, and now you hide them on the ceiling of your bedroom. When you were in the 5th grade, you put a note of your dream in the time capsule of your class. You wrote that your dream was to be an adventurer. Zhang Qingrui felt cold in her hands and feet, and her heart beat faster after reading only 2 or 3 lines. That was horrible. Anyone who saw such an email would find that the contents of the email actually listed their own secrets as if they were family treasures from when they were young to when they grew up. Zhang Qingrui felt like someone had seen through her every move and even her psychological activities since she was a child, which made her hair stand on end. She didn't even have the courage to continue reading, but she had to continue reading. After saying so many secrets, I think you must be scared now. But please don't be afraid. I didn't say so much to scare you. I just wanted you to know that I am you. Yesterday's you. I want to tell you some things that you might have forgotten. I will tell you the truth about what happened in the underground palace of Ulaanbaatar. Zhang Qingrui took a deep breath and flipped to the next page of the email with trembling fingers. Mausoleum, Professor, White Wolf, Extraterrestrial Divine Stone, Zhang Jiao Luoqiu. Yui, under my request, I may be able to retain a part of my memory regarding this matter. I don't know how much I can keep in Luoqiu's hands. Maybe I was too greedy. I quietly wrote this on my way back and set the time to send it to the day I received the mail. because I didn't know whether I would reveal any flaws and let Luaccio discover them and take back my precious memories if I knew the truth too early. I don't know if you, who read this email, will be able to remember everything clearly in the future, but I hope that this memory, which is the most precious experience for me and for you now, can be kept forever. Zhang Qingrui read the email over and over again. After reading it for the third time, she still couldn't calm down. She didn't have any impression of the content of the email, but compared to what she clearly remembered now, it seemed to be able to explain everything she experienced in the underground palace. She subconsciously recalled the strange scene that happened at school not long ago, the scene that she thought was a nightmare. Afterward, there was a rumor that a skeleton was found under an old tree. If this is true, then I have an amazing classmate series? Zhang Qingrui couldn't help but laugh at herself. She even subconsciously believed that this email was indeed something she wrote to herself. But if this is true, even after a while, I'm afraid I still can't pretend that I don't know about it naturally and not be discovered by this amazing classmate when we meet, right? Zhang Qingrui couldn't help but smile bitterly. She looked out of the window and put her legs together on the couch, lying on her knees. It was sunny outside, but she was thinking about the real story in the email. It seemed to be more memorable than the content of the story she remembered. The dream is to be an adventurer. This was probably the feeling of being punched to the flesh. It felt like all the internal organs in his body were stirred together. Yi Yin began to think of something to relieve the pain on his body. Of course, in this situation, the easiest thing for him to think of was the situation of those who were caught by him after being beaten, which was probably his current situation. He fiercely clenched his teeth. Every time his abdomen was hit, he would fiercely clench his teeth. He was careless. Although he had been on guard all the time and knew that this guy was a fierce man who had experienced the flames of war and had tried his best in the real fight, he still couldn't resist his terrifying fighting ability. Worthy of being an elite of lion. Few people can survive my punches. King Kong. Yin raised his head, looking at this guy whose muscles were not as bulging as those of wrestlers. He had underestimated the strength of this guy from the beginning. Yin spat out a mouthful of blood. His sweat-soaked hair covered his eyes. You're not bad. Worthy of being an active person in the Middle East. King Kong sneered, suddenly reaching out to grab Yian's hair, getting close to him. You know what? I've only used 30% of my strength. Really? No wonder I have a feeling when I look at you. Ian suddenly smiled. Do you know what that feeling is? What feeling? The feeling of a wildcat. Ian laughed. So you didn't use your full strength, making me think that's all you've got. King Kong suddenly stopped talking, with a strange smile on his face, suddenly punching. His fist didn't hit Ian directly, but brushed past his cheek and finally hit the wall behind him. Some of the broken stones sputtered from the wall and hit the back of Ian's head and neck, causing a slight sting. Although he couldn't see, he could imagine how much damage this guy's fist had caused to the wall. How did this guy practice? How could he break the wall with one punch? At this time, King Kong sneered, still saying nothing. He just stepped back 2 steps, crossing his arms in front of his chest, looking at Yi Yan's expression expressionlessly, as if he was admiring it. After a while, King Kong slowly said, I've used up my patience. If you still don't want to tell me who helped you escape from the chase and successfully return to China, next time I won't be so polite. This was probably what Yi Yin wanted to hear the most. He said slowly and with difficulty, You really have spies on our side. So what if you know? King Kong said indifferently, Anyway, you can't get out of here. Yi Yin couldn't help but agree with him. His hands were locked by special handcuffs and nailed to the wall separately. His ankles were also shackled. It was very quiet here, and he didn't hear any sound during these days of being trapped. But at night, he could hear the sound of animals, so he was afraid that he was in the mountains nearby. It wouldn't be easy to be discovered. Therefore, if there was no accident, he would probably die here. Thanks. His fingers moved slightly, and a sparrow resting on his finger flapped its wings and flew away. The servant girl from the club watched the sparrow fly away. Then she turned around. There was a mountain nearby, and in front of him was a simple cement room. It was probably a resting place for the workers of the Forestry Bureau. No one should have been here for a long time. Chapter 166. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, /go, /little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. After putting the chain on the iron door of the cement room, King Kong circled the room twice before leaving. This place was on the top of the mountain with no water or electricity. He could resist not washing himself, but he couldn't resist not eating. All the communication devices on Yi Yan's body had been destroyed by him. The 4 specially made shackles, the torture he endured these days, and the remaining strength he had left from drinking water. He couldn't get away. Of course, if possible, King Kong wouldn't let Yi Yan out of his sight. But after Lin Geng inexplicably turned into a vegetable, he suddenly had a hard time dealing with things here. The order from the inside of the organization was to stop all the activities here temporarily. King Kong left quickly after making sure everything was done outside the cement room. He wouldn't leave for too long. There were houses at the foot of the mountain. He just needed to buy some food and would be back soon. But he didn't know that all his actions were under the watch of a pair of royal blue eyes. Yi didn't walk to the front of the cement room until King Kong was far away. Almost all the windows here were closed, but they couldn't block the servant girl's sight. In the room, Yi Yan was closing his eyes, lowering his head, and leaning against the wall as much as possible to reduce the weight on his legs. He was probably taking advantage of the time when King Kong was away so that he could get more rest. Yi went around to the wall where Yi Yan was chained. She put her palm on the wall. Crack! Suddenly, there was a soft sound. Yi Yan opened his eyes at once, looking at his left wrist subconsciously. The handcuff was released at this moment. Crack, crack, crack. Following that, 3 consecutive sounds rang out. The remaining handcuff and 2 leg shackles were also released strangely at this moment. Suddenly, Yi Yan regained his freedom from being trapped. He opened his mouth slightly. It would be weird if this thing could release itself. He had to think carefully about who saved him, but he wasn't sure. Maybe King Kong let him go on purpose so that he could contact the contact after he escaped and expose the contact's identity? Did someone save him? Or was this a trick? Yi Yan frowned and put his ear to the wall, listening attentively to the movement outside the house. However, to his disappointment, he could not hear anything other than the sound of cicadas. Suddenly, the sound of a chain falling to the ground came from the iron door of the cement building. Yi Yan was stunned for a moment. He quickly walked up and pushed open the iron door without using any strength. On the ground were thick chains that were once used to lock the iron door. Yi Yan also quickly circled around the cement building, but still found nothing. If they let me go on purpose, this method is too childish. But who would come to save me? Yi Yan frowned. Or maybe he really let me go on purpose, but disguised it as a means to make it seem like he let me go on purpose, leading me to not consider that he let me go on purpose. Anyway, he had to leave this place first. He had been tortured severely these days and was covered with cuts and bruises. Even if he waited for King Kong to come back, he didn't think that he could beat this guy who had a monstrous fist strength. Love go, shall say, W. Chew. After waiting for Yi Yan to find another way to leave, Yi picked up her shoes and walked out casually. She walked into the cement building and looked at the fist mark on the wall that was punched by King Kong. She didn't care about it all. Miss Maid, who always had a habit of cleaning, now happily restored the handcuffs and shackles to their original appearance. Then she walked out of the door, closed the iron door, and locked the chain again. Then she left while humming a nameless tune. Oh, Bracken. Miss Maid's mood suddenly became better when she saw the wild vegetables growing on the path. It seemed that she didn't need to buy today's vegetables. Yes, Mr. Sun, I'll take care of it. Yes, Lin Geng's company has been bought. Yes, it's the Zhong family in the capital. It's really troublesome, but they don't know about that batch of goods. Maybe they just want this company. Because Lin Geng had contacted the Zhong family before the accident, intending to seek more cooperation. Well, except for me, no one knows about Heaven Shadow Entertainment. King Kong was walking back to the cement building. He saw the chain was still hanging from a distance, but he didn't rush in. I'm still investigating about Lin Geng and Miss Shu. Yes, Tu Jia and her sister are indeed missing. But don't worry, Tu Jia is just a tool used by Lin Geng to amass wealth. Lin Geng himself doesn't know much, let alone this woman. She has been controlled by Lin Geng's defective product for a long time, so her body can't be separated from the efficacy of the defective product. Now that she's missing, I suspect that she may have been poisoned to death. But I don't know where she fell. Her body hasn't been found yet. I see. I'll keep an eye on Yi Yan. Hanging up the phone, King Kong unlocked the chain expressionlessly and pushed open the iron door. This place was so poor that only a human sandbag could kill some of the boredom. A sneer appeared on King Kong's face, wondering how long this criminal policeman could keep his mouth shut. But the next moment, King Kong's sneer froze. She was missing. The tools used for imprisonment on the wall were intact, so were the chains and locks outside the door. The only window was undamaged, but the person was really missing. King Kong dropped the bag of food he was carrying. He couldn't understand how a person could vanish in thin air under such circumstances. Bang! Mr. King Kong punched the iron door furiously, leaving a huge dent on the iron door with his powerful fist. He felt as if he had been ruthlessly toyed with. Yang Ping's figure could be seen from outside the window. The ant looked cleaner in the district's janitor uniform. Although her movements were slow, it could be seen that she was quite serious. The big bamboo basket was full of fallen leaves. It was just a little more than an hour's work. Inside the room, Luochio drew the curtains. He knew that the ant would look at him from time to time. Of course, considering the ant's poor eyesight, she shouldn't be able to see him. But Luochio felt that even if there was only a slight possibility, it wouldn't be good if the shadow in her blurred vision wasn't the one she expected. It was Fong Jipping's room. There was no one in the room except the nurse. Actually, the nurse was taking a nap. As to why Luochio was here now, of course, it was because he sneaked in illegally. Theoretically, there was no place that Boss Luo couldn't go in this city, even the vault of the bank. Luochio looked around Fong Jipping's room, finding a box in the wardrobe. There was an old rattle drum in the box. Luochio picked it up, turning it in his hand. Dong dong, dong dong. He remembered that the ant also had a similar rattle drum in her hand, which made the same sound when it was shaken. But no matter how similar the two drums sounded, they couldn't be the same. There was no mistress in this room. The marriage status above the household register showed that he was widowed. After visiting Fong Jipping's room, Luochio casually strolled around Fong Ruchong's room, but found something interesting in a small safe on the bedside table. Chapter 167. Genius remembers love in 1 second/small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Elgar, Tribute to Love. The gentle and moving sound of the violin sounded. It was Fong Jipping's solo part. This was the last day of practice, followed by the formal performance at the banquet. Fong Ruchong listened to Fong Jipping's performance with satisfaction. He knew better than anyone else how hard his son worked on the violin these years. After the end of the song, a soft clap sounded suddenly. Fong Ruchong looked towards the source of the sound and saw a man who was about the same age as him coming towards him with a smile. At this moment, Fong Jipping put down his musical instrument and walked to the two of them. He nodded to Fong Ruchong, looking at the other man, saying in a slightly restrained manner, "Uncle, you're here too. Relax." The man smiled. "Grandma Zhang also invited your grandfather to her birthday banquet, but he's still abroad and can't come back, so I'll attend on his behalf. I've seen the program list of the banquet and know you'll be there, so I can watch a rehearsal." Fong Ruchong suddenly asked, "Is Dad still abroad? How's his health recently?" The man's surname was Wu. His name was Wu Qiubin. His family was in the shipping business. Hearing Fong Ruchong's question, he said coldly, "He's fine recently, just a little problem. Pay more attention to rest." Fong Ruchong said with a smile, "Oh, I met an old Chinese medicine doctor some time ago. I want to introduce him to Dad. Let's talk about it later." Wu Qiubin answered casually, grabbing Fong Jipping's hand, smiling. "Come on, let's have a chat. I haven't seen you for almost a year. How are you?" There were not only Fong Jipping and Fong Ruchong in the orchestra, but seeing such a scene, the other members didn't say much, even pretending they didn't see it. Conductor Fong was born in a poor family. He seemed to fall in love with the daughter of the Wu family when he was young, so the Wu family didn't allow it. Thus, The young conductor eloped with the young lady. It was said that after a few years, the daughter of the Wu family passed away due to illness, leaving Fong Ruchong and Fong Jipping. Perhaps because of guilt, the Wu family accepted Fong Ruchong again. Of course, people with discerning eyes could see that they only accepted the posthumous child of Miss Wu. Later, with the secret support of the Wu family, Fong Ruchong got many opportunities and was now a well-known conductor. It should be said that it was an example of a father relying on his son's status. Beside him, Wu Qiubin patted Fong Jipping's hand and said softly, "How have you been recently?" Fong Jipping glanced at Fong Ruchong and then looked at Wu Qiubin, saying cautiously, "Everything is fine." Wu Qiubin suddenly said, "Don't mind your father. You are our Wu family's child. I heard that you're going to participate in a competition overseas, right?" "Yes, we are preparing for it now." Fong Jipping said softly, "Your grandfather's mouth is hard, but his heart is soft." Wu Qiubin said amiably, "Work hard in this competition and get a good ranking. That way, you can shut some people's mouths. Don't worry, you're my sister's only son. I won't let you suffer." Fong Jipping suddenly didn't dare to look into Wu Qiubin's eyes, so he pretended to nod, "I know." Wu Qiubin smiled and looked at Fong Jipping's eyes, saying kindly, "Your eyes are so similar to your mother's." Fong Jipping couldn't help but smile bitterly, thinking inwardly, "This is probably the reason why his father Fong Ruchong is willing to buy me back." When they went home in the evening, Fong Ruchong, who sat on the co-pilot's seat, suddenly asked, "Today, what did your uncle say to you?" Fong Jipping didn't look at Fong Ruchong, holding the steering wheel carefully, just like how he held his life carefully. He said softly, "Nothing. He just chatted with me about daily life." "Didn't he mention me?" Fong Ruchong also looked out of the window at this moment, but asked closely. "No." Fong Jipping shook his head. The two kept silent for a long time. When they were about to return to the high-end community, Fong Ruchong looked at the community lights in front of the windshield, saying indifferently, "Look at this place. These are what a successful person should have." He looked at Fong Jipping. "These things are hard to come by. You should cherish them." Fong Jipping nodded and didn't continue. The lights in the community ahead were far less gorgeous than those in the city, but they were what many people desired. When they were about to return to the duplex villa, the slowly moving car suddenly stopped. Fong Ruchong gave a start. "What's wrong?" Fong Jipping was also confused. "I don't know. The engine suddenly stopped. I'll get off the car to check." Fong Jipping hurriedly got off the car, opening the hood of the car. Suddenly, a burst of thick smoke came out. Fong Jipping, who was choked by the smoke, coughed twice uncomfortably. He brushed the smoke in front of him, turning his head to breathe in the fresh air. But at this moment, he saw a figure not far away. Fong Jipping gave a start, staring at the figure, who left hurriedly. He wanted to say something, but couldn't. Fong Ruchong stuck his head out of the window, looking at Fong Jipping. "What did you see?" "No, nothing. It should be a worker in the community." Fong Jipping mumbled, saying hurriedly, "It's strange, this car was just bought last month, but it broke down so quickly. The quality of things nowadays is really problematic." "Really?" Fong Ruchong opened the door and walked out. "It's just a few steps away. Leave the car here, call the property management, and let them deal with it." Before the security guard arrived, a person came to the broken-down car. Luochio reached out and patted on the headlight of this car, murmuring, "I'm sorry, I made you take the blame of poor quality." But it was a Japanese car. He could take the blame no matter how many times. Luochio glanced at the house not far away that had been lit up, and the figure gazing silently under the shadow of the tree outside the house, muttering to himself, "Let's call it a day." He stepped back slowly, his figure gradually disappearing in shadow. When Luochio returned to the club, looking at the time, it was already past dinner time. Miss Servant Girl, whose eyes were as quiet as a statue, suddenly stood up spiritually. "Master, do you want to eat?" Luochio asked. "Is dinner ready? It just needs to be warmed up." Miss Servant Girl said with pity, "I picked some wild fern outside today, but it's probably not edible now." It was a lie to say that it was not edible, but Yi had a very high requirement for the food she prepared for her master. Even a little bit of stale food would be disliked. Luochio looked at the time, smiling. It's okay, you can pack it up. I'll heat it up and eat it at home. Since I picked it up outside, it's a waste to throw it away. Have you eaten? Not yet. I'm starving. I'm planning to buy something outside. Downstairs, Luochio called Runziling because he didn't see the lights in his home downstairs. No need. I've got something to eat. You can come back. I love you so much. Baby. Sub-editor Ren's roaring voice came. Now, Ren Xiling is sprinting towards her warm home at a speed of 130 kilometers per hour. Hello. Don't hang up. F*CK. Boss Luo silently felt pity for Uncle Ma, who had to deal with many speeding tickets for this woman this month. He smiled casually and put away the phone. At this time, he suddenly saw a woman sitting on a travel suitcase on the roadside downstairs. A foreign woman, probably in her early 30s. Luochio couldn't see her appearance clearly, but this foreign woman had taken off her shoes and was rubbing her heels. The foreign woman suddenly raised her head, seemingly because she saw someone passing by. She said in not very fluent Mandarin, "Sir, I just moved here today and accidentally sprained my ankle. Can you help me up?" Luochio looked at the building the foreign woman pointed at. Well, it was actually the same building. Which floor? The 12th floor. Chapter 168. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Thank you so much, Luo. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't know how to come up. Out of his instinctive curiosity, Luochio glanced at the living room of the 12th floor. Then he looked at the woman from the United States who called herself Jessica and said, "Don't mention it." Foreigners were not rare. While helping Jessica upstairs, this talkative American woman had already told him about her situation. As a photographer, she planned to come to this city to shoot a set of works with Chinese themes. Many units in the building where Luochio lived were rented. Even the unit where he and Ren Xiling lived was rented. He was curious about the environment of Jessica's rented apartment, but he wasn't curious about Jessica's foreign friend. Therefore, after sending her in, Luochio pressed the elevator button and went downstairs. After entering the house, he turned on the light, changed his shoes, and walked into the kitchen with the packed ingredients from a club. Luochio rolled up his sleeves and started to cook the dishes that Yi had already prepared. Soon after, he heard the sound of the door opening. Hearing the sound from the kitchen, sub-editor Ren trotted in wearing slippers. "Boss, all the green lights are green. King came back safely today." Luochio glanced at Ren Xiling, who raised her hand to salute him, then continued to stir-fry the things on the pan attentively. Then he said lightly, "Idiot." Ren Xiling made a fierce expression, then took a deep breath. "It smells so good, Bracken. Oh yes, put some sesame oil. This is a midnight snack, not a dinner. Why eat greasy food?" Luochio said indifferently. "I don't want to hear you complain about your weight." "Tut." Ren Xiling patted Luochio's forehead. Then she rolled her eyes and reached for a plate of fried clams. Slap. Unexpectedly, before he could pick up a clam, Luochio hit him hard with a wooden spoon in his hand. Without turning his head, Boss Luo sprinkled a small amount of salt into the pan and said indifferently, "Wash your hands." Ren Xiling pathetically broke through the obstacles and once again took out a piece of scallion from a plate and quickly put it into her mouth. "Why do I have a feeling of wanting to beat this woman up?" Luochio sighed slightly. Sub-editor Run was like a victorious general, licking the sauce on her fingers with relish. Ding-dang. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. "I'll go open the door." Ren Xiling, who had won the battle, knew the character of this treasure all too well. She knew when to stop, so she quickly ran out of the kitchen obediently. As soon as she opened the door, Ren Xiling saw a woman with blonde hair and blue eyes, who looked like a star walking out of a movie. She couldn't help being stunned. Ren Xiling glanced at the foreign woman's surging breasts, which were about to burst out of her clothes. She instinctively straightened her back. "I can't be belittled, okay? Who are you looking for?" "Hello, I'm Jessica." "Excuse me, is this Luochio's home?" Although this woman's accent wasn't standard, Ren Xiling felt that she didn't mishear. Suddenly, time seemed to have stopped, and an extremely shocking scene began to play in her mind. Fuck! 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 What's going on? It's almost 10 o'clock in the evening, and a woman actually came to find her wooden treasure. And it's a foreign woman? Wait a minute. Could this be little Luo Chio's girlfriend? Wait, even if she's his girlfriend, why did she come here at this time? She knew Luochio quite well. If he planned to bring her back, he would at least inform her. Is it possible that they had a quarrel? But although this foreign woman has a good figure, I have a good figure too. Well, although she has a good figure, isn't she a bit old? Sure enough, Luochio likes mature women after all. No wonder. He didn't like those girls I introduced him before. Is it because they are too tender? Wait, it's not the time to think about these trivial things. The most important thing is, how should I face this woman? What's her name? Jessica. Yes, Jessica. Fuck, I'm not afraid of anything. I don't care which country she's from. If she can enter this door, I'll be an elder. Even if she's an imported girlfriend, she has to be restrained. Well, be serious? No. If I'm too serious, will it affect the relationship between mother and daughter-in-law? So be casual? Foreign girls should be more casual. But what if she thinks I'm too casual? Do I still need my mother-in-law's dignity? Excuse me, does Luochio live here? Ahem. Yes, he's here, Rin Xiling said indifferently. Come in, Luochio. Someone's looking for you. Boss Luo, who was wearing an apron, stuck his head out to take a look. He asked someone to wait for a while before he went back to the kitchen and turned off the fire. After that, he took off the apron and walked out with a frown. Unexpectedly, before he could say anything, Rin Xiling stepped on his foot. Luochio didn't understand why this woman stepped on him. Rin Xiling was furious. You brat, your girlfriend came to find you in the middle of the night. Why don't you give me a F*** smile? You're looking for me? Luochio looked at Jessica and asked. Jessica said, I'm going to boil some water when I get home. I heard that you can't drink the tap water directly in China, but the kettle at home is broken. Can you give me some water? Since it had come to this point, there was no reason to refuse, right? Come in. I'll pour some for you. Thank you. Seeing that, Luochio took an empty mineral water bottle from Jessica's hand and went into the kitchen. Sub-editor Rin felt very confused. She looked at Jessica and smiled awkwardly. Then she hurriedly followed him into the kitchen. Rin Xiling put her arm around Luochio's shoulder with a voice that could give people goosebumps. Who's this woman? A new resident on the 12th floor. Luochio waved his hand and patted Rin Xiling's hand away. I met her downstairs when I came back. She sprained her ankle, so I helped her. She's a short-term tenant. What? She's a new resident here. Rin Xiling looked disappointed. Luochio sneered disdainfully. What's the drama in your head? Ah, really? No. How come? Rin Xiling smiled embarrassedly. I'm going to greet her. It's not good to keep her waiting. Ah. It didn't take long to pour the water, and it wasn't enough time for Rin Xiling and Jessica to say anything. In fact, sub-editor Rin couldn't say anything. Anyway, she wasn't his girlfriend. Rin Xiling lost her interest in dreaming about her future mother-in-law. After a while, Luochio walked out. There's more than one bottle in the fridge. You can take it. Jessica looked at Luochio gratefully. Thank you so much. I won't disturb you. Watching Jessica walk into the elevator with her hands on the wall, Rin Xiling said abruptly, Well, I prefer Oriental women. Let me tell you, this kind of foreign girl looks good in her 30s, but she'll age quickly after 10 years, like an old woman. Why are you looking at me? I'm telling the truth. Time to eat, Luochio said indifferently. Go wash your hands. Got it, boss. Seeing Rin Xiling walking to the kitchen to take the plates, Luochio smiled subconsciously, but reached out his hand to the shoe cabinet at the entrance, touching the top floor. He found a thin box about 2 fingernails wide. There was a slightly shining green light on the box. It looked like a device for eavesdropping. It should be what Jessica put here secretly. Luochio frowned, putting it back to its original place. He walked into the living room and saw Rin Xiling eating. So he said suddenly, I'll take a shower first. You eat first. Before Rin Xiling responded, he had walked into the bathroom and turned on the hot water. The sound of water splashing was heard. Luochio had disappeared from the bathroom. The next moment, he appeared in a unit room on the 12th floor. Chapter 169. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Jessica sat by the window of the living room, opening the curtains a little and observing the outside through the gap. She stayed still for nearly 3 minutes. After that, she sat down and opened her suitcase. There was a laptop and a small briefcase. When the briefcase was opened, it was a device with a screen. Jessica took out a pair of earphones and plugged them into the briefcase. She grabbed the earphones and put them on her ear, turning some knobs in the briefcase. Not long after, Jessica leaned on the sofa and closed her eyes. She took out a recording pen from her suitcase and put it in her mouth. Of course, she didn't speak Mandarin with a weird accent, but fluent British English. Luocio walked around the room scrupulously. Listening to Jessica's British accent, he guessed that the so-called American was just a lie. It's the 26th day since Yi Yin disappeared. I came to China, his hometown. Speaking of this, Jessica suddenly erased this paragraph and rewrote it. It's the 26th day since Yi Yin went missing. I don't have any clue, but I've gotten close to the person who might be a clue. I've successfully planted a bug on him. Jessica turned off the recording pen and put on her earphones. She put her hands on her abdomen, listening and resting at the same time. She didn't know that everything she did, including the 2 sentences she said just now, had been clearly perceived by someone. Luocio frowned. He snapped his fingers lightly, and Jessica's breathing began to slow down. Luocio opened Jessica's travel suitcase and took Jessica's mobile phone in his hand. He began to check these things carefully. He found a document bag in the suitcase. The thick and heavy document bag poured out a lot of miscellaneous things. Then there was a folder. Secret communication with an international criminal organization, betraying the secrets of the Interpol, fired. Absconding. Wanted list. Looking through the pages, Luocio's brows furrowed deeper and deeper. He even found Jessica's identification card and a pistol in her suitcase. It seemed that Jessica was here with a mission. As for the reason why she came to this building to become a tenant, it seemed to be found in a photo in the folder. It was a photo she had taken with Yi Yin at the airport a few years ago when he left. After Yi Yin went missing in Lyon, they started to track him down. Jessica came here this time because she felt that Yi Yin might contact her. She planned to wait for him to expose himself. After silently sitting on the sofa for a while, Luocio finally opened the pendant on a necklace that he took out from the briefcase. There was also a picture on the small pendant. It was taken from the side. It was probably taken secretly. The person in the photo was Luocio's Uncle Yi Yin. In the photo, Yi Yin was drinking from a can of coffee as he gazed into the distance. He came to his hometown. Luocio suddenly thought of the sentence that Jessica had deleted. He walked out of the bathroom as usual. While wiping his wet hair, he saw that Rin Xiling had already fallen asleep with her bare feet on the coffee table. He glanced at the dishes on the table again. The dishes on the plates were neatly pushed to the side. She said that she was hungry but kept the extra portion in the end. Luocio turned off the TV and increased the air conditioner in the living room. Then he took a thin blanket to cover Rin Xiling before going back to his room. Deducting 1 day of life, target location locked, while feeling the feedback from the altar, Luocio was about 30 kilometers away from his home. There were several different old districts in this city. Luocio was born in one of them, and now he was in another one. Xiaochun Martial Arts Club. Looking up at the plaque above, Luocio was silent for a while. Yi Yin was in this martial arts club that had been closed for a long time. This martial arts club was actually owned by Yi Yin's girlfriend. Luocio knew that the policewoman who died in the accident was a descendant of a fist skill. But after inheriting the martial arts club, she became a policewoman who was in charge of eliminating crimes. The martial arts club actually became a place where she lived. But since a few years ago, this place had been empty. Luocio remembered that he had come here several times when he was very young. When Luocio was about to enter, he suddenly stopped and moved his sight. At night, under the old banyan tree in front of the martial arts club, a figure came out from behind the trunk and walked quickly to Luocio. It was Yu Yi. Luocio didn't expect to meet Miss Servant Girl here, although Yu Yi had the ability to come to his side at any time. But under normal circumstances, Yu Yi wouldn't take the initiative to disturb him if he didn't call her. "Are you following Uncle Yi?" Luocio frowned. Yu Yi probably didn't expect to meet her master here. But if she left before her master, it would be against the principle of loyalty. So she had to meet him. Yu Yi said softly, Yu Yi is protecting him. What happened? Yu Yi said calmly, Master, do you remember Ling Gong has a man called King Kong? He should be a member of the criminal organization that controlled Jiangchu. As for Heaven Shadow Entertainment, it seems to have some secret dealings with this organization. Master, your Uncle Yian's appearance this time seems to be in pursuit of this clue. He was caught in the process of following King Kong. This morning, I released Yi Yin from the place where he was trapped. Of course, he doesn't know. Luoqiu kept silent for a while, saying suddenly, Today, a foreign policewoman came to my place. She even installed a listening device in my house. He told them what he had discovered. Miss Servant Girl thought for a while. Well, it seems that your Uncle Yi was framed. I'm afraid that there are members of this criminal organization or colluding officials in the Interpol. Mr. Yi Yin might have gotten some clues, which led to the current situation. He came back to China this time, on one hand, to escape from the pursuit, on the other hand, to find the real criminal and prove his innocence. It's just that we don't know for the time being which side the young lady near the master belongs to. Luoqiu suddenly thought of the necklace hidden by Jessica. However, there was no way to determine which side Jessica belonged to based on this necklace. Luoqiu pondered for a while. Is Uncle Yi seriously injured? Yu Yi said softly. He should have been tortured for a few days, but he still has the ability to escape here. At least his life is not in danger. He just needs to recuperate for a while. Luoqiu nodded, suddenly asking, I found out about Uncle Yi because of Jessica. How did you know? Miss Servant Girl said indifferently, Master is the master. If Master is troubled, then Yu Yi is not responsible. Luoqiu heaved a sigh of relief. He suddenly thought of something interesting. If Jessica didn't come to his side, if he didn't find out about Yi Yan's matter because of Jessica, would things be settled quietly in a few days? And by then, Yi Yan would be cleared of his suspicion and appear in front of him with a smile. Then he would invite Rin Xiling, Uncle Ma, and others to have a home-cooked meal together. Yu Yi said softly, Master doesn't like Yu Ye's private actions. Indeed, Yu Yi should report to Master first. Luoqiu shook his head. Luoqiu directly felt his heart at this time. Although Yu Yi was just a puppet, he already felt that the soul inside was worthy of his love. He walked behind Miss Servant Girl, holding Yu Ye's hand, smiling. There are some memories of my childhood here. Come on, I'll take you in. In the high-class residential area, Fong Jipping looked at Fong Ruchong. Dad, the property manager called the tow truck driver. I'll go out to deal with it. Fong Ruchong nodded, watching Fong Jipping go out. He frowned. Although this son was bought by him, he didn't feel the so-called blood relation at all. But he dared to say that he knew Fong Jipping better than ordinary father and son. He had to do this, because if Fong Jipping was not completely under his control, the Wu family would know that Fong Jipping was not Miss Wu's biological son if he revealed even a little bit of evidence. Fong Jipping's every move, every word, and even every expression, whether natural or unnatural, he could tell. Chapter 170. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Although it had been empty for several years, this place had basically maintained the same appearance as before. Apart from the extra dust, there was nothing extra here, but there was nothing missing here. Yi Yan's familiarity with this place was no less than the place where he lived. Therefore, even without turning on the lights, he could skillfully find what he needed in the Shao Chun dojo. The curtains in the room were drawn. Yi Yan lit a candle and began to apply some ointment on his body. Looking at the bruises on Yi Yan's body, Luoqiu's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't directly appear in front of Yi Yan. First of all, he couldn't explain it. Secondly, he knew Yi Yan's personality. Yi Yan didn't want anyone to see him in such a sorry state. Was it all King Kong's doing? Luoqiu asked Yu Yi coldly. Yu Yi nodded and talked about the fist print on the wall in the cement room. Ordinary people, even if they have undergone high-intensity training, can't hit with such strength. Luoqiu frowned. King Kong is not human. Yu Yi shook her head and said, if it's a monster, even if it's the weakest monster, this kind of fist strength is a bit too much. Master, do you remember the new drug you found from Lingung last time? Luochio said, King Kong is a member of this criminal organization. You mean he's also a user of this new drug? Yi nodded. That's possible. They could surpass ordinary people, but they were not as strong as the weakest non-humans. That kind of medicine should be able to do that. Luochio was about to say something, but suddenly turned to look at the living room outside the room. Someone is coming. But the person who came was not someone Luochio needed to guard against or deal with, because the person who came in the dark was Boss Luo's other uncle, Ma Haud, Officer Ma. Ian also heard the movement at this time. He gritted his teeth and endured the pain in his body. His whole body tensed up. Love, go, shout, say W. Chuhi took the nunchaku on the bed. This was one of the weapons in the martial arts club. Listening to the approaching footsteps, Ian estimated the distance of the other party and suddenly jumped out. The nunchaku in his hand even made a piercing sound and fiercely swept towards the person who was approaching in the dark. However, the figure suddenly knelt on the ground and dodged the nunchaku's attack. Old Yi, it's me, Old Ma. Officer Ma was sweating at this time and said with lingering fear, if I didn't kneel down inexplicably, my head would have been blown up by you. Ian stretched out his hand to pull Officer Ma up and said, I was also thinking that if anyone could find this place, the first one would be you. Officer Ma wiped the cold sweat and said, in addition to me, there are a few former brothers in this city. If you really want to hide, this is the only place. I came here tonight to try my luck. Ian frowned and said, Old Ma, from your tone, you really know? Officer Ma smiled bitterly and said, I received a wanted order from Lion. Who did you offend? Your crime is a bit serious now. Are you injured? Sit down first. By the way, is there anything to eat? Ian sighed. In the last operation, I found some clues about the collusion between our organization and the criminal organization. While chewing the bread bought from the convenience store, Ian recalled, I originally planned to go back to the headquarters to hand in the information, but on the way back I met a few killers. These killers knew my whereabouts, so I suspected that someone in the organization leaked my information. Ian sneered and said, I guessed right. Before I returned to the headquarters, I had been fired. A wanted order was issued, and a group of criminal police secretly wanted to catch me. Officer Ma frowned and said, colluding people in the criminal police organization. Oldie, I'm afraid this guy's position is not low. Ian sighed and said, I still don't know who it is. Then you came back this time? The target of the last operation was a guy who was responsible for helping this criminal organization to transfer supplies. I found that a batch of very important goods should be hidden here. Ian frowned and said, the evidence I have is not enough to show who the traitor is. If I hand it out casually, it may be regarded as false evidence. You plan to find the goods and force this criminal organization to negotiate with you? Ian sneered and said, I at least want to know who betrayed me behind the scenes. I don't know how many people in the criminal police organization are involved with this criminal organization. I don't trust anyone. I can only do it myself. And have enough food and clothing. Officer Ma suddenly smiled. This is Brother Luo's golden sentence. The atmosphere eased a bit. Officer Ma sighed and said, I thought you were outstanding, but I didn't expect the outside world to be more chaotic. What is the origin of this criminal organization? It is so resourceful. Ian said seriously, what I found is just the tip of the iceberg. I only know that the mastermind of this organization is called Mr. Sun, and their name is Michael Club. Officer Ma was stunned at this time and said coldly, You really can change your name, an angel who does evil things. But who is this Mr. Sun? I'm afraid it is not the same person. Ian frowned and said, Mr. Sun is just a code name. This so-called mastermind is a collective name of several, or more than a dozen people. Interpol has been secretly investigating Michael Club these years. According to some of the information they have, these people are probably important people in all walks of life. Capitalists, senior officials, even big drug lords, warlords, and so on. Ian glanced at Ma Haud and said, The doctor who died here last time, He was just the lowest person in this organization. Doctors like him who take organs for this organization are probably as many as carps crossing the river. After knowing the seriousness of the matter, Mahoud suddenly became silent. After a long time, Mahoud sighed and said, "Old Yi, how can I help you?" Yi Yin patted Mahoud's shoulder and said, "You will retire in a few years. Don't interfere in this matter." "Old Ma, listen to me. I am alone and have nothing to be afraid of, but you have a family, you have a lot of things to worry about. King think I'm a person who is greedy for life and afraid of death." Unexpectedly at this time, Yin suddenly burst out, one hand pinching the pulse on Officer Ma's wrist, the other hand pressing the aorta on his neck, and pressed Ma Hao to the ground. Yin, Officer Ma suddenly felt dizzy and couldn't resist for long before he fainted. "Allah Xiaochun and Brother Luo, I don't want to lose anyone else." After silently looking at Ma Hao for a while, Yin took out Ma Hao's wallet and took out all the money inside. He looked at the family photo in Ma Hao's wallet and smiled. "I'm not married yet. This is the red packet money you owe me for these years." Yin quickly put on his clothes and left Xiaochun Martial Arts School. Luochio helped Ma Hao up from the ground and helped him lie down on the bed in the room. At this time, Yi heard Luochio whisper, "Uncle Ma has rheumatism these years. If he lies on the ground for a night, it will be difficult for him to walk tomorrow." Luochio sat on the bedside, looking at Yi. "After Jiangchu's matter, I secretly wanted to buy some information about Mr. Sun from the altar, but I didn't expect the price to be so high. It turns out that it's not a real name, and there is no Mr. Sun, but a group of people. Michael's Club, it sounds like they are against us, but it turns out that they're just doing some criminal business." Yi said indifferently, "There is a saying in the East, it should be clowns." Luochio stood up and disappeared. Before disappearing, the servant girl only heard the master's order. "Keep an eye on Yi Yin." After Fong Jipping finished the car, he didn't go home immediately, but walked around the garden of the community for a while. He suddenly looked at a bulletin board, "Come out, don't hide." But no one came out from behind a bulletin board. However, a pair of legs appeared under the bulletin board. Fong Jipping took a deep breath, taking 2 steps forward. After a moment of silence, he said, "You can go back." No response. Fong Jipping suddenly got angry. "Why do you still appear in front of me? You didn't show up that year, but now you show up. Do you think you can pretend that nothing happened?" "So, sorry." He could only vaguely hear a timid and hoarse voice. Fong Jipping clenched his fists. His heart couldn't calm down. He didn't know what he should say. He could only look at the person behind the bulletin board and leave quickly. Chapter 171. Genius 1 Second Remember Love / Go / Little. Showa Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The rehearsal of Old Madame Zhang's party was over, but the band had its own business. Fong Jipping got up as usual, seeing Fong Ruchong, who was having breakfast in the living room. Fong Ruchong suddenly said, "I have something to do. I'll go there later." Fong Jipping didn't say anything, sitting down quietly. The two of them finished their breakfast in silence. The housekeeper had been used to the scene where the father and son didn't talk much. Indeed, there were only father and son in a family, so there would be more silence. When Fong Jipping went out, he subconsciously looked around. He didn't see that woman, but somehow he felt that she might be somewhere. Fong Jipping couldn't let himself stay in this place for too long, so he rushed out of the community. He had the urge to not go back to the orchestra. Subconsciously, he went to a place where he could calm down, a famous theater in the city. The restaurant was closed in the morning, but Fong Jipping had performed here many times. The security guard outside the door already knew this young violinist. He smiled and let Fong Jipping in. There weren't many people in the theater, but a girl was decorating the stage. Fong Jipping quietly walked behind the girl, suddenly hugging her waist from behind, holding her in his arms. Being attacked suddenly, the girl didn't panic, smiling on her delicate face, then saying in a low voice, "Oh, where did this pervert come from? I'm going to call the police." The girl's fingers made the shape of a phone, pasting on her face, "Hello, is that you?" Fong Jipping smiled, lowering his head on the girl's shoulder, saying in a low voice, Man, I miss you." Man didn't make a fuss. She grabbed Fong Jipping's hand and quietly let this man hug her on this stage. After a while, Fong Jipping loosened the girl in his arms. Man turned around, pointing at Fong Jipping's nose. Is this enough? If you're in a bad mood, I can rent out a shoulder. Fong Jipping smiled. The two came to the seats under the stage, sitting down, watching the stage. Fong Jipping suddenly grabbed Man's hand. Are you tired? It's okay. Xiao Man patted her shoulder, but it will be ready this afternoon. Fong Jipping suddenly turned over the chair and came to Man's back. He put his hands on her shoulders and gently rubbed. Relax. Love, go little say, Netuchu, Xiao Man said with a bitter face. If the manager sees it, will he fire me? Fong Jipping smiled. Then I won't play in his theater anymore. Xiao Man quickly turned her head and said, that won't do. If you don't perform here, where am I going to perform for free? All right, stop talking and take a break. No one will be here. Mandy immediately closed her eyes. After a while, Man took the backpack next to her. She took out a crumpled flyer from her backpack and took out her phone. Fong Jipping glanced at the leaflet and stopped subconsciously, blurting out, What is this? Man didn't seem to care about it, typing on her phone, a missing persons leaflet. When I went to work this morning, I saw a student pasting it downstairs. He said he was helping someone, so I asked him for one. Well, I'm going to post it on my WeChat moments and see if I can help. Missing for 20 years, his parents must have had a hard time. Fong Jipping continued, saying slowly, but have you ever thought that it might be the parents' fault that led to the child's abduction? Well, Man blinked, but they had been searching for 20 years. If she didn't sell her child on purpose, she should have been punished for her mistake, right? Besides, if they were heartless, they wouldn't have searched for 20 years, right? Fong Jipping fell into silence. Man looked up at Fong Jipping. Fong Jipping patted Man's shoulder. I have something to do. Let's have dinner together tonight. Okay, not long after Fong Jipping went out, Fong Ruchong also went out. The famous conductor was not in a hurry to leave the neighborhood. Instead, he strolled through the forest near his home. His eyes seemed to be searching for something. He was very patient. Not long after, Fong Ruchong stopped. He slightly narrowed his eyes, watching the back of a man who was sitting under a tree and resting. Love go, Xiao, say ku. In fact, if he hadn't heard a slight cough, Fong Ruchong wouldn't have found someone here. As a conductor, his hearing was more sensitive than ordinary people. Who are you? Suddenly, Yang Ping heard a voice behind her. She was eating breakfast in the community management canteen. Yang Ping hurriedly wiped her face, standing up hurriedly. I'm not slacking off. It's not time to go to work. I don't ask you this, but who are you? Fong Ruchong looked at this cleaner from head to toe. When the car broke down last night, he seemed to see this person when he stuck his head out. Later on, when she followed Fong Jipping, she found that he seemed to be looking for the whole person. His face was weather-beaten, his skin was dark, and his back was slightly hunched. Fong Ruchong recalled Fong Jipping's behavior last night, having some guesses in his mind. I clean like this, sir. Yang Ping lowered her head, not daring to look directly at this man, with a dignified voice. I'm Jipping's father. Fong Ruchong said abruptly. Yang Ping raised her head at once, seeming to be excited. But she suppressed it quickly, stammering, Sir, I don't understand what you mean. What's that? Fong Ruchong suddenly pointed at a gray-white cloth bag tied together with a garbage basket. Yang Ping suddenly became flustered. Nothing, just some clothes and sundries. Let me have a look, Fong Ruchong said indifferently, but his action was very fast. Before Yang Ping reacted, he had walked over quickly and opened the cloth bag. Hey, you can't look. But it was too late for the aunt to stop him. Though her vision was blurred, she clearly saw Fong Ruchong turning over her cloth bag. The aunt was so anxious that her eyes were about to burst into tears. You can't look. I'm right. Fong Ruchong sneered, looking at Yang Ping with a leaflet in his hand. You're indeed Jipping's biological mother. I didn't expect that you could find this place with a population of more than 1 billion. Seeing that she had been exposed, Yang Ping had no choice but to say, Mr. Fong, I just want to see my son. I don't intend to do anything. Haven't you seen it? Fong Ruchong said indifferently. Then why are you still here? I just want to see him. Yang Ping lowered her head, saying faintly, "See him from afar. I just want to know whether he's happy or not." Fong Ruchong sneered suddenly. "Really? Isn't it because you think Jipping has a good life now and your future life is guaranteed? So, you don't want to leave?" Yang Ping was anxious, gritting her teeth and saying with slight agitation, "Mr. Fong, how can you say that?" Fong Ruchong snorted, "I've asked about Jipping's childhood. I know you're a gambler, and I know why your son was abducted." Yang Ping grasped her clothes tightly. Fong Ruchong in front of her was like a huge mountain, which made her unable to breathe under his pressure. She moved her lips, but didn't know what she could say. Fong Ruchong continued indifferently. "Do you know how your son lived after he was abducted? I'm not afraid to tell you that he was forced to beg on the street by human traffickers after that. I don't need to tell you how he begged for money on the street, right? You've been looking for your son for such a long time. Haven't you seen how those children who were forced to beg for money were treated?" I don't know. I don't know." Yang Ping's sallow face twitched at once. She sat on the grass powerlessly, lowering her head dejectedly. Big drops of tears came out from her white and turbid eyes. She had cried for countless days and nights, but she had never shed such sorrowful tears as if her heart had been dug out. Her son was abducted that year. She was heartbroken and scolded by her family. She left her hometown, walked out of her home, and traveled across half of China. For the past 20 years, she had never been able to live a day in peace. But now, when she heard of Fong Jipping's experience, the guilt and self-blame buried in her heart for 20 years were like a viper that wanted her life. "I'm not a human. I deserve to die. I'm not a human. I deserve to die. I'm not a human." Yang Ping slapped her own face again and again. This pair of old and weak hands was exerting all her strength. "I'm not a human. My son. God, I deserve to die, but why do you have to treat my son like this? God, if you want to kill me, I deserve to die. Right at this time." Fong Ruchong grabbed Yang Ping's hands, saying coldly, "Stop acting. I've seen too many people like you. You just want money, don't you?" He took out a checkbook from his clothes, writing down a series of numbers quickly. He pulled it out and threw it into Yang Ping's arms, saying, "Fong Jipping is my son. He has nothing to do with you. Here's 2 million yuan. You leave this place. Don't ever come back. You better not think it's too little. Even if your son wasn't abducted and lived in that barren place, he couldn't earn it all his life. It's enough for you to live in your old age." Unexpectedly, Yang Ping quivered, slapping away the check in her arms like a viper. Her lips kept twitching, her shoulders weak. "I don't want it. I don't want it. I only want my son. I'm sorry for him. I don't want the money. I deserve it." Fong Ruchong frowned, shouting in a low voice, "Fong Jipping is very important to me. I won't let you appear in front of him again. I don't care whether you want it or not. If you don't disappear, don't blame me for being rude to you." But Yang Ping seemed to hear nothing at this time. She suddenly cried and laughed. She suddenly smashed her palms against the tree trunk. "Why would I bet money? Why would I bet money? It was you who threw my son away. Why would I want you to do anything?" A pair of old hands smashed towards the trunk crazily, but soon her skin and flesh were broken. The 10 fingers were connected to the heart, but it couldn't be compared with the pain in her heart at this time. Yang Ping only leaned against the tree trunk when she was tired of smashing. Her hair hung down messily. Her hands kept shaking. She suddenly acted like she didn't see Fong Ruchong. "Hua, where are you? Mom is coming for you." "Hua, Hua, Hua." Fong Ruchong stared at the woman without blinking. Step by step, she left like a walking corpse. He felt that the woman had gone mad. "Hua, where are you? Hua, Mom bought you a popsicle, one for you, one for me. Hua, Hua." Chapter 172. Genius 1 Second Remember Love / Go / Little. Shua Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. This crazy woman didn't have much time left to live. Fong Ruchong was looking at the medical records he found in the gray cloth bag in the car. Yang Ping left crazily. Of course, she didn't care about the thing she took with her. It was then picked up by Fong Ruchong. Of course, Fong Ruchong wanted to destroy these things at once, but he knew too little about Yang Ping, so he kept the bag for the time being. Putting them down, Fong Ruchong lit a cigarette, smoking slowly, muttering to himself. Even if she won't live long, it's always a trouble to keep her alive. I can't expose the fact that Jipping isn't my son. He looked at Yang Ping, who was outside the car. She was like a bag of skin, walking aimlessly on the road. He had been following Yang Ping since they left the neighborhood. The community was built on the riverside, but the landscaping in the community was done very well. The people who were supposed to go to work in the morning were naturally busy. The river path outside was relatively far for the retired old people. Therefore, at this time, except for the occasional passing car, there was no one else. Fong Ruchong impatiently stuffed back the things he had dug out from the cloth bag before rushing out of the car door. He quickly came behind Yang Ping, trying to shake the rattle drum in his hand. Along with the sound of the drum, Yang Ping suddenly stopped and slowly turned around. Baby tiger, is that you? Fong Ruchong glanced at the rattle drum in his hand, stuffing it back into the cloth bag and throwing it towards the river. Your son is there. Yang Ping subconsciously saw the cloth bag flying out and falling into the water. She suddenly became excited, grasping the railing by the river. Baby tiger, Mom will save you. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. She turned over. Fong Ruchong coldly watched Yang Ping rolling down the lawn and falling into the water. A lunatic falling into the water. No one is to blame. Wu family was not just a normal rich family. If they found out he had cheated them for so many years, Fong Ruchong muttered to himself, don't blame me. Even if there's only a slight possibility, I can't let everything break, seeing that figure directly sink into the water after struggling. Fong Ruchong glanced around and hurriedly drove away. Along the way, not to mention people, there wasn't even a car. It was as if the right time and place were there to help him. He had raised Fong Jipping for more than 20 years. He knew that his son was soft-hearted and indecisive. Then I'll help you make the decision. Actually, isn't the camera function pretty good too? Looking at the clear scene in his hand, Luoqiu, who had drilled out of nowhere, leaned against the railing by the river and could even hear what Fong Ruchong had just said. In the river, a figure slowly floated out of the water. Soon, it was as if it was being transported by something. That person, including the gray cloth bag, was being transported up. After pressing the save button, Luoqiu began to think. In his line of sight, the soul that contained everything in this fragile body was now so dim and lightless. Looking at the painful expression on Yang Ping's face, Luoqiu stretched out his hand and stroked her forehead, whispering, "Sleep, have a good dream for now." Then, holding the ant's arm, Luoqiu took her and disappeared by the river. Finally, the stage of the theater was finished in advance. The theater manager kindly let Man get off work in advance. Thinking about having dinner with her boyfriend in the evening, Mandy rode her bicycle back to her home in a happy mood. She planned to take a bath first. Although she didn't wear makeup, she couldn't go out to meet people with sweat all over, right? Perhaps because she was too happy, the bicycle bumped into a small stone on the road. She was careless and directly fell down. Fortunately, she didn't get hurt, but the thing on the bicycle basket rolled out at this time. At this moment, she was crossing the bridge, quickly arriving at the bridgehead. The thing rolled down to the bottom at once. Xiaoman looked at the thing that was thrown into the water with annoyance. All of a sudden, her good mood was gone. Ah, someone is drowning. In Man's sight, she saw a woman lying on the river, seeming to be in a coma. Can't you come out for dinner? That's right. When I was on my way back, I met a drowning person by the shore. I'm in the hospital now. This aunt hasn't woken up yet. I can't find her family's contact information. So, I want to wait here for her to wake up. Sorry, I'll make it up to you next time. Fong Jipping also planned to go home to return a set of clothes. When he was about to arrive at the community, he received a call from his girlfriend. Which hospital are you in? I'll go and have a look. No, it's not a big deal. Don't you have a very important performance tomorrow? Don't worry, go to bed early tonight. Otherwise, if you don't perform well tomorrow, your father will definitely blame you. I'm so old, I'm just taking care of a patient. It's okay. Perhaps this was the quality that attracted him among so many excellent women. Fong Jipping didn't argue with Man. Well, after the performance tomorrow, If you're still in the hospital, I'll come to see you right away. Okay, let's eat more tonight. Fong Jipping smiled. He walked out of the taxi. There were 2 cars at home. One broke down last night, so he left the other one for Fong Ruchong to drive in the morning. He had to take a taxi to and fro. Looking at the entrance of the community, Fong Jipping had a feeling that he didn't dare to go in. He knew that there might be a pair of eyes watching him silently from somewhere. Fong Jipping paced back and forth outside the community. At this time, a security guard in the security booth suddenly popped his head out. "Mr. Fong, what's the matter?" Fong Jipping looked at the security guard. "Sir, have the cleaning ants got off work?" The security guard seemed to be stunned. "What's the matter with the cleaning ants? They should have gotten off work now." Fong Jipping said casually, "Nothing. I just have some garbage to dispose of at home. Forget about them. Since they got off work, they shouldn't be here." Fong Jipping suddenly let out a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, the security guard said, "Well, if so, maybe you can find her. A new auntie came in these 2 days, and she sleeps here at night. Let me help you find her." Fong Jipping gave a start. Could it be, "Who's that auntie?" The security guard didn't care about it, sighing, "Poor auntie. 2 days ago, she came here to find a job, saying that she didn't need money and only needed to eat. She said that as if she was going to cry, and even knelt here." The security guard pointed at the outside of the booth. "Here, it's here." Fong Jipping's lips moved slightly, staring at the place the security guard pointed at, absent-mindedly with red eyes. "Mr. Fong? Mr. Fong? Do you still need a cleaning, auntie? I can help you." "No, no need." Fong Jipping shook his head. "Let's talk about it tomorrow." With that, he rushed into the residential area. That security guard watched Fong Jipping leave, shaking his head suddenly. The security guard then closed the window of the booth, sitting down. As he sat there, he suddenly disappeared into thin air, directly disappearing from the security pavilion. Not long after, someone in the booth got up from the ground. This was the security guard who was supposed to guard the post. "Damn, how'd I fall asleep? Did the captain see me?" When he got home, Fong Jipping faintly showed a melancholy expression because he couldn't find anyone. Since he couldn't find anyone, he could only go back to this cold home. At this time, Fong Ruchong was having dinner at the table. The housekeeper had also gotten off work. The housekeeper wouldn't stay overnight and would probably leave after finishing the dinner. "Don't you want to eat?" Looking at Fong Jipping going upstairs directly, Fong Ruchong suddenly said, "No, I'm a bit tired." Fong Jipping shook his head. Fong Ruchong said indifferently, "Are you really tired or mentally tired?" Fong Jipping stopped, saying with an unnatural look, "Dad, I don't know what you're talking about." While eating, Fong Ruchong said without turning his head, "Today I met a cleaner here. She came to me, saying she was looking for her son." Fong Jipping gave a start, walking forward subconsciously, blurting out, What did she say?" Fong Ruchong sneered. "What else could she say? That crazy woman cried and made a scene in front of me. Didn't she just want money? I gave her some money, and she left without saying anything." Fong Ruchong turned back, looking at Fong Jipping with a sneer, and she seemed to be laughing happily. Fong Jipping stepped back, moving his lips inconceivably. How could it be? Fong Ruchong stood up, walking to Fong Jipping, saying indifferently, "Don't you understand? Although I don't know how she was so lucky to find this place, but that woman lost you because of gambling. Don't you know what her nature is? Are you really naive to think that she came to you just to make up for you? Maybe she did have such thoughts, but obviously, she took my money, didn't she? Do you know what this proves?" Fong Ruchong said coldly, "You can't compare with that money. Do you still want to recognize such a person?" Fong Jipping lowered his head, keeping silent. "I don't blame you for hiding this from me. I'm also a man raised by a mother, and I know some things are hard to give up." Fong Ruchong said, "But you know clearly how we got the life we have today. To give up everything for a woman who lost you for money once or twice. Think about it. Is it worth it or not?" I'll go back to my room first." Step by step, he went upstairs to his room. Chapter 173. A genius will remember love in 1 second /shall. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. The banquet would begin in 2 hours. Zhang Qingrui was busy greeting some guests who had arrived early. Gu Yuzhai might be famous in the antique circle, but the other industry of the Zhang family was one that most rich people had to show respect to. Miss, the Zhang family is here. Shi Shiji reminded Zhang Qingrui in a low voice. Zhang Qingrui nodded. Uncle Shiji, please help me greet other guests here. I'll go to the Zhang family myself. Shi Shiji suddenly said. Miss, old madam said, if old Zhang comes, you should take him to her. Zhang Qingrui gave a start, then nodded and left leisurely. Ms. Zhang wore a dress today, with light makeup, but she was the white lotus among the many beautiful flowers in the banquet. Hey, isn't this manager Shi? Long time no see. Suddenly someone shouted Shi Shiji's name behind him. He turned around, putting on a smiling face at once. Looking at that person, Mr. Wu, long time no see. When Wu Qiubin arrived, he asked the secretary beside him to hand over the congratulatory gift. Then, he pulled Shi Shiji aside to chat. Wu Qiubin glanced at the guest sign-in sheet, suddenly saying, Manager Shi, we've known each other for more than 10 years. Old Madame Zhang always likes peace and quiet, though it's her birthday, but she invited so many influential people at once. Brother, can you tell me if she has any other intention? Shi Shiji said lightly. Old Madame does have some arrangement, but I'll keep it a secret for now. Mr. Wu will know it later. Well then, I'll wait and see what good thing it is. Wu Qiubin smiled. You go ahead with your business. I'll find someone. Take care. Turn off your phones. Feng Ruchong ordered in the band's resting room. The performance of the orchestra, especially the performance of this kind of classical music, required rigorous preparation. Temporarily cutting off contact with the outside world so that the members could calm down and properly cultivate their emotions during the performance was naturally a very important part of the plan. Feng Ruchong walked to the haggard Feng Jiping and sat down, saying indifferently, They're all reputable people outside. Your face will leave a bad impression on them. Feng Jiping forced a smile. Feng Ruchong said, Listen, 10 years of hard work off the stage. 10 minutes on the stage. No matter how outstanding you were in the past, as long as you failed once on the performance stage, all your previous efforts would be wasted. You could be confused, you could be irritable, but when you pick up the violin, you're just a violinist, nothing else. Feng Jiping took a deep breath, patting Feng Ruchong's hand. Dad, don't worry. I know what to do. He lowered his head and carefully applied the rosin on the bow of the violin. Since she left because of money again, there was nothing to worry about. Feng Jiping began to adjust his emotions. He turned off his phone and closed his eyes, not wanting to think about anything else. Baby tiger, baby tiger. Man woke up at the start, but what she saw was the aunt lying on the sickbed and talking in her sleep. She patted her shoulder. She had stayed in the hospital for a day and a night. The doctor said the aunt's physical condition was very bad. She had accumulated a lot of problems over the years, including tuberculosis. Man didn't find anything useful in the bag that the aunt held tightly even when she was drowning. Even the ID card was expired and couldn't be used. She only knew that the aunt's name was Yang Ping. But she found some leaflets in the bag, the leaflets she got from the young man who posted the leaflets downstairs. Was it fate? Man thought interestingly. She didn't expect to meet this aunt who was looking for her son when she fell down. 20 years, she had traveled over half of the country. Man subconsciously grasped the aunt's palm. She was injured here. The doctor said it was a new injury, but the finger bone was broken. Man couldn't figure out how to make these injuries. Aunt, you will find her baby tiger. Man said softly. As if she heard Man's voice, the aunt on the sickbed suddenly stopped talking in her dream. Man stretched out her hand and pressed on the aunt's forehead. She couldn't help but be happy. The fever seems to be gone. Her mood suddenly became better. Man subconsciously looked at the time and wanted to call her boyfriend. The number you dialed is powered off. Many performers were like this before performance. Man had seen many of them when she was working in the theater, but she was somewhat depressed. Stretching herself, Man began to scroll through her circle of friends in boredom. It was a strange public account. Hey, did I add this public account? Man Man curiously looked at the status of this public account. It went viral in her WeChat moments. Scumbag mistreated homeless aunt. Man Man subconsciously clicked on the video. It was probably at the riverside. Where is your son? Baby tiger, mom is coming to save you. Man Man opened her mouth at once. She looked at the scenes in the video with anger. She didn't know how this video was shot, but it was so clear. She could clearly see the appearance of the middle-aged man and the homeless aunt in the video. The auntie in the picture was clearly the auntie lying on the sickbed. But more importantly, Man Man also recognized the middle-aged man in the video. She was a bit panicked and couldn't believe it. This seems to be Jipping's father? This riverside scene, she had seen it before. It was the place where Fong Jipping once strolled with her. He looked up at this towering hotel. Luochio couldn't help frowning. He clearly felt the breath of Black Soul Envoy here, and it was Black Soul number 9 that he had seen before. Luochio knew this was the place of old Madame Zhang's birthday party. He had secretly come here several times before to observe Fong Jipping, but he didn't feel the breath of number 9. Luochio sat down in a quiet place in the lobby of the hotel. Of course, no one would notice him here. Not long after, a wisp of black smoke appeared beside Luochio, but no one could see it. Black Soul number 9 greets Master. Hearing the voice of Black Soul number 9, Luochio raised his head and suddenly smiled. I planned to visit you several days ago, but I was delayed by something. I didn't expect to meet you here. I also didn't expect to meet Master here. Black Soul number 9 said calmly. Luochio asked curiously, are you following a new customer here? Black Soul number 9 kept silent for a moment, suddenly saying, Master, may I ask if my achievements over these years are enough for me to get back my lost memory? Luochio didn't say anything at this moment. He just looked ahead, watching the eldest daughter of the Zhang family walk out of the elevator to the lobby. At this moment, several people came into the hotel. Zhong Luochen supported Old Zhong, followed by Cheng Yun and Old Luo, who had followed Old Zhong for decades. Chapter 174. Genius 1. Second, remember, love, divided by little? This is a wonderful novel for you to read. After receiving them, Zhang Qingrui led them to Zhang Lilanfang's room at once. Love, go, little, say W. Chul Madam only asked old Master Zhong to stay, saying that they needed to catch up. Outside the door, Zhong Luochen looked at Zhang Qingrui with a faint smile. Miss Zhang, we met last time at Guyu Zhai to return something. Zhang Qingrui nodded. It had been more than a month. Looking at Zhong Luochen's smile, she didn't know why, but she felt that it was more beautiful than the last time they met, more perfect and more unreal. It was a strange feeling. About 2 months ago, this second young master of the Zhong family came from the capital to visit her grandmother. At that time, Miss Zhang at least had an impression of him. In today's impetuous society, Zhong Luochen could be classified as an outstanding young master of a wealthy family. But now, he seemed to be more outstanding, as if he only had the appearance of an outstanding young master left. Mr. Zhong, are you going to wait here or go to the venue first? Zhang Qingrui asked. Zhong Luochen said indifferently, I'll wait here. If Miss Zhang is busy, I dare not disturb you. Zhang Qingrui was relieved since there were servants who had served Zhang Lilanfang for more than 10 years. The Zhang family didn't have many members, so she had to welcome the guest herself. Then I'll take my leave. Watching Zhang Qingrui leave, old Luo, who had served the Zhong family for several generations, suddenly smiled. This Miss Zhang is so similar to Miss Li when she was young. Zhong Luochen naturally knew who the Miss Li that grandfather Luo was referring to was. He had once heard about the past of this old madam of the Zhang family from grandfather Luo. Moreover, it wasn't difficult for him to hear from grandfather Luo's words how many young talents admired this young lady of the Li family back then. Naturally, this included his grandfather Luo. Vaguely, Zhong Luochen even felt that his grandfather, the old master of the Zhong family, might be one of her admirers. Zhong Luochen smiled, suddenly ordering, Cheng Yun, go to the venue and see who's here. Yes, young master. When old master Zhong came in, he was only carrying a small bag. At this moment, Zhang Lilianfeng was drinking tea in the room with a calm expression. Old Zhong smiled and sat down in front of Zhang Lilianfeng. He took out a delicate food box from a small bag. This is the symbol of Tong de Fong, a time-honored shop in the capital. Madame Zhang glanced at it and was a little surprised. Old Zhong smiled slowly and said, "It's been a few decades. Tong de Fong had long disappeared during the rise and fall of the era. This food box was left behind from the past. My old master has long since departed, but I have found his successor. Try it. The taste of this osmanthus cake is the same as before." Zhang Lilianfeng moved aside the food box that old Zhong had pushed over, saying indifferently, "It seems that you, old Zhong, have spent a lot of effort on this old woman." Old Zhong said softly, "You are old, and so am I. But in my eyes, you have never aged." "Zhong Gaoshan, do you know what you are saying?" Unexpectedly, Zhang Lilianfeng responded coldly. "I know, but there are too many things that I don't know." Old Zhong sighed and said, "Today is a good day for you, and it's also a good day for both our families. Don't be angry, just pretend that I didn't say anything." They looked at each other without saying anything, drinking tea silently without chatting. Zhang Lilianfeng didn't find any clues from old Zhong's expression. Her black card had become a fake one, but she had received it and checked it that day. She just felt that this matter should have something to do with the Zhong family, but she couldn't find any evidence. Decades had passed, and things had changed. She didn't know if this short and thin old man in front of her was different from that year. People's hearts were unpredictable, and no one knew who was who. This room seemed to be silent, but in fact, there was a conversation going on. Luoqiu had seen old Zhong once when he was prolonging his life. "Love go, Xiao Sei, W quas for Madame Zhang." It was the first time for him to see her. She was Zhang Qingrui's grandmother, and their eyebrows were very similar. Luoqiu looked at Black Soul number 9. "Is it because of this old lady that you want to recall your past memories?" Black Soul number 9 didn't intend to hide it. "I just vaguely feel that. I know her." Luoqiu was different from the former boss. TNZ retained his memory after becoming a Black Soul envoy, but the former Black Soul envoys didn't. However, there were records of the former Black Soul envoys in the club. Except for those who were completely dead, the past of the remaining Black Soul envoys were all recorded in the club. It wasn't strange to vaguely recognize her. The relationship between you two was unusual. Luoqiu suddenly said, "Let's talk about your memory later. I have something to do during this time, especially today." Black Soul number 9 found that the temperament of the new boss was different from that of the former boss. The new boss tended to maximize the quality of the customer's soul, while the former boss only pursued quantity. As an individual who was touched by his past, his original job was the Black Soul envoy of the club. This kind of duty was like a brand that was left in his mind. "I understand." Black Soul number 9 didn't insist, because as a Black Soul envoy, he knew that no Black Soul envoy could force anything from a boss. The banquet had started. The famous orchestras in the city and even in the nearby provinces would perform for a long time for this banquet. Accompanied by the melodious and charming music, the guests found their acquaintances and whispered to each other. In addition to Madame Zhang, who hadn't shown up yet, Wu Qiubin saw a lot of celebrities here. Of course, there were also some city officials. When the low-key Zhang family called people to stand up, their influence was indeed much stronger than that of his Wu family. Moreover, when he recognized an old man sitting quietly in a corner, he refreshed his understanding of the Zhang family's background. "That's the old master of the Zhang family in the capital." Wu Qiubin was very surprised. The Zhang family could even invite this bodhisattva? Wu Qiubin adjusted his breath, taking a glass of champagne from the secretary and approaching him quietly. "Excuse me, are you old Master Zhong?" Wu Qiubin lowered his posture to the lowest. Old Luo, Zhong Luochen, and Chengyan glanced at Wu Qiubin. Chengyan, who came to the banquet earlier, told Zhong Luochen the information of the guests. At this moment, Zhong Luochen whispered a few words into his grandfather's ear. Old Master Zhong smiled. "You're Wu Kaidong's son, right? We met a few years ago." Wu Qiubin beamed with joy. "Old Master, you have a good memory. You even remembered me when we met in a banquet in the capital a few years ago." Old Master Zhong was bored since the main character of the banquet hadn't appeared yet. He pointed to the seat beside him. "Sit down. I've known your father for a long time. I heard he's not in good health recently." Wu Qiubean sat down cautiously. "It's just some small problems. He's fine. Thank you for your concern, Old Master." He looked at Zhong Luochen, who was sitting beside Old Master Zhong, and asked, "Who is this?" "My grandson, Zhong Luochen." Old Master Zhong introduced him with a smile. Zhong Luochen nodded to Wu Qiubean. Wu Qiubean smiled. "You're really a dragon among men. Old Master, you're so lucky." Old Master Zhong was quite happy. This child still needs to be taught a bit more. I plan to let him train here during this period of time, so please take care of this junior." This was a bodhisattva. Wu Qiubean naturally didn't dare to say anything. He would rather have a chance to cooperate with him. "You came alone?" Old Master Zhong suddenly asked. "Don't you want to bring some juniors to meet you?" Wu Qiubean smiled. "My 2 sons are still studying abroad, so I can't take the time." "Yes, but my nephew is here." "Oh, bring him here for me to see." Wu Qiubean pointed at him. "Over there, the one playing the violin on the other side of the stage. This child has some talent and has won many domestic awards. In a while, he will be going abroad to participate in a competition." Old Master Zhong sized up Fong Jipping in the orchestra, nodding, "Good. Wu Qiubean seized the chance. When he has a break, I'll ask him to come and say hello to you." Old Master Zhong had lived for many years, so he was very clear about Wu Qiubean's thoughts. But he was also a person who liked young talents. This kind of musician wouldn't be involved in politics and business, so he naturally preferred him. So he nodded slowly. Fong Jipping, who was playing, glanced at the banquet venue casually. He saw Wu Qiubean looking at him with a kind smile. Fong Jipping closed his eyes, concentrating on his performance. He felt that Fong Ruchong was right. There was nothing to be confused about. Fame and fortune were in his hands now. If he grasped it tightly, there would be nothing to worry about in the future. Even if it was Fong Ruchong, he would be able to get rid of his control one day. Thinking of Wu Qiubean's kind eyes, Fong Jipping said sorry silently. As a conductor, Fong Ruchong changed the rhythm. The string music became quieter. At this moment, the host of the banquet, Old Lady Zhang, walked out slowly accompanied by Zhang Qingrui. The guests started to make way for the old lady. Downstairs of the hotel, Xiaoman was still trying to make a call, but she still couldn't get through. She had watched the video many times along the way, and also looked at the flyer she saw from the anime many times. Chapter 175. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Some behaviors were uncontrollable. Luochio came to this conclusion when he saw the figure of the ordinary-looking girl who was completely different from the style of this banquet. Why did he say that? He was sure that Man would find Fong Jipping, but he didn't expect that the girl would come at this time. Black Soul number 9 was beside Luochio at this moment. Since his master was here, as a Black Soul envoy, he naturally didn't dare to leave. More importantly, Luochio didn't seem to have any intention of letting him leave. He looked at the girl who was constantly looking around the corridor, then looked at Luochio and said, "Master, is this young lady your target today?" Something uncontrollable has happened," Luochio said calmly. Originally, Luochio just wanted to check on Fong Jipping's condition today, and it wouldn't take too long. But now he suddenly moved his lips. His voice was very soft, but it traveled very, very far. Almost at the same time, Miss Maid, who was somewhere in the city, heard her master's voice. "I have something to do. I'll come back later." The servant girl in the distance nodded and said yes. At this moment, Yi was actually in a shabby hotel without a license. This was the place Yi Yin had come to later. He rented the place with the money he took from Officer Ma's wallet. After cutting off the connection with Luochio, Yi glanced at Yi Yin, who was lying on the bed. Any medical institution, or even those nameless doctors, could expose their whereabouts. It would not be easy for Yi Yin to recuperate. However, he could only use this clumsy method to let his body recover naturally. Of course, this would take a long time. Looking at the sleeping Yi Yin, Yu Yi smiled. She walked over to the table and unscrewed Yi Yan's half-drunk bottle of mineral water. She slowly sprinkled some white powder into it. These powders melted and disappeared as soon as they entered the water. They were colorless and odorless. Of course, it would not be a colorless and tasteless poison. Instead, it was something that could speed up the recovery of injuries. For hundreds of years, the products of Miss Maid, who had her own laboratory, were definitely of high quality. It was the sound of string music. After Mandy heard the sound, she locked onto the location and began to walk towards the source of the sound. At the entrance of the banquet hall, she could see Fong jipping on the stage from afar. Mandy looked at the entrance of the banquet. What was more amazing was that in such an important occasion, there wasn't even a guard at the entrance. It wasn't that there weren't any, but the two people at the signpost outside the door had actually fallen asleep on the table in broad daylight. This is a wage thief. Although she thought so, Mandy still sneaked into the banquet hall, seeing that Mandy had already walked in. The perfect entrance attracted the boss of a club. Since Mandy appeared much earlier than Luocio expected, since she was already here, he naturally didn't plan to let her leave. However, when Luocio intended to replace the two people at the signpost, he unexpectedly heard the voice of his old classmate. It was Zhang Qingrui's voice behind him. "Luocio, what do you want to do here?" Boss Luo, who had just stretched out his hand, turned around, frowning slightly. He shouldn't show himself in front of others. But Zhang Qingrui saw him. Ms. Zhang did see Luocio. Her face was full of vigilance, seeming to be hesitating, but finally she walked a few steps forward. Zhang Qingrui looked at the two employees who had fallen asleep on the table, hesitating. "You let the girl in on purpose? What do you want to do?" Luocio glanced at Zhang Qingrui, feeling curious. "You saw me." Zhang Qingrui forced a smile. "Is it strange to see you? I even saw this guy beside you." Looking at Zhang Qingrui's eyes, Luocio knew this guy referred to Black Soul number 9 beside him. Black Soul number 9 frowned at this moment. His eyes suddenly became sharp. Luocio waved his hand at this moment, looking at Black Soul number 9. "Wait for me aside." Black Soul number 9 nodded, leaving swiftly. Luocio then asked, "When did it happen?" Zhang Qingrui bit her lips. "After coming back from Ulaanbaatar, I saw a lot of strange things inexplicably. At the beginning, when I was at home, I just saw a vague shadow in the yard by chance. Then it gradually became clear. I didn't dare to tell others. Even if I did, they wouldn't believe me." She glanced at Luocio, plucking up her courage. "I kept this matter to myself and tried to think of a way. I didn't even dare to let this guy know that I found him, so I pretended not to see him. I thought it was just a wandering ghost that came from nowhere and would leave after a long time. But," she gritted her teeth, "but when I saw him and you in the lobby, when I saw him turn into a cloud of black smoke in front of you, I knew it wasn't that simple." Luocio nodded, saying indifferently, "It seems that the experience in the underground palace really opened up some of your talents. As time goes by, your perception is getting stronger and stronger. But you saw me in the lobby, but you didn't feel anything strange at all. This calmness really makes me feel inferior. I'd rather not see it. If this shadow didn't stay in my house all the time, and if he didn't contact you, I wouldn't even want to show myself." And Zhang Qingrui smiled bitterly. "It seems that the content of the email I wrote to myself is true." "Email?" Luocio was stunned. Zhang Qingrui said as if she had nothing to lose. "It says that you wrote it before my memory was washed away, and then you sent it to me recently. You remember it?" Luocio asked calmly. Zhang Qingrui shook her head. "No, I still don't have any impression, but now it seems that I don't have to remember it, right?" She took a deep breath, her calm, but couldn't hide her slightly trembling shoulders. "When we were at school, were you behind my back?" Luocio nodded. Zhang Qingrui's talent allowed her to see through his concealment. Strictly speaking, he couldn't be classified as an ordinary person anymore. Of course, the main reason was because of Black Soul number 9. Because she noticed the existence of Black Soul number 9, then she came into contact with his existence. Luocio didn't disappear or hide from people's sight, but more like he disappeared from the perception of ordinary people. For example, ultrasonic waves, ordinary people couldn't hear it, but it did exist. Then you. Then why did you ask the shadow to stay in my house? Zhang Qingrui plucked up her courage. Are you afraid that I'll remember the erased memory? Or is there another reason? Ms. Zhang didn't think in this direction. From the content of the email, she knew that her classmate was doing something to get something precious from others, and then to fulfill some wishes. Luoqiu could easily imagine what Zhang Qingrui was worried about. Although he didn't see the content of the email with his own eyes, according to Zhang Qingrui's character, she probably recorded everything clearly, no matter how big or small. Sometimes, a woman's little mind was really a scary thing. Miss, old madam wants you to go back. At this moment, Shi Shiji came out and walked to Zhang Qingrui. It's almost time for the toast. It was like a chain reaction. Luoqiu, who had no sense of existence, was talking to Zhang Qingrui after being discovered by her. Under normal circumstances, a person wouldn't talk to the air. This illogical part quickly impacted the perception of ordinary people. Chapter 176. Genius remembers love in 1 second / little. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. Now that Shi Shiji had seen Luoqiu, it was not difficult for him to remember Luoqiu. He had served the Zhang family for dozens of years and had done more than 20 things in the business world. Of course, he had mastered the skill of recognizing people. What's more, this was the only classmate of the only bloodline in the Zhang family. To put it bluntly, how could the old lady allow her granddaughter to go to school alone? Not only did she keep it a secret, but she had also investigated the people in the school. Shi Shiji thought that Zhang Qingrui had mentioned this classmate to the old lady during the past 1 or 2 years. But she didn't know that the old lady had investigated this classmate thoroughly. Zhang Lilinfeng couldn't be blamed for doing these things. Zhang Lilinfeng, who called herself the old lady, was actually old, but not old. She had been an orphan and a widow for so many years. If she didn't keep the mentality of being a young lady of the Li family, how could she settle down in this place? In the eyes of Zhang Lilinfeng, even though she had never seen this classmate before, he could be classified as a person with a clean family background. Therefore, even though her granddaughter occasionally mentioned this classmate, Zhang Lilinfeng didn't say anything. Zhang Qingrui once commented in front of the old lady that this classmate of hers was a rare, quiet person. There were many standards to evaluate a person, such as smart, kind, enterprising, ambitious, gentle, and so on. But she especially used the word quiet. So Zhang Lilinfeng was relieved. Miss, you invited Mr. Luo here, right? Shi Shiji recognized him. So he took the initiative to ask with a smile. His intention was good, but apparently he did something bad in Zhang Qingrui's eyes out of kindness. But since he said that, Zhang Qingrui could only say helplessly, kind of, who knew what this extraordinary classmate in front of him would do if he said no? Don't you see how easy it is for this guy to summon wandering souls and ghosts? And how easy it is for him to erase my memories? He was simply mysterious and unfathomable. Since you're here, come in. Shi Shiji looked at Luoqiu and said politely, Mr. Luo, sorry for bothering you last time. I'll have a drink with you later as an apology. It was probably the dream of countless people to make General Manager Shi of the Zhang Family Financial Group act so courteously. It was just that social status and wealth were not as valuable as a ball with a story to the club's boss. However, Luoqiu did not intend to reject the kindness of others. So be it if you show up. You just have to enter. It's a Vanity Fair inside. Hearing about it was one thing, but experiencing it firsthand was a completely different matter. You haven't told me. Why did you let that girl in? Ms. Zhang lowered her voice and asked Luoqiu. She had spent a lot of effort on this birthday banquet. Now, before she could figure out the situation, she just wanted this banquet not to be ruined. God knows what this guy, who came and went as he pleased in the underground palace of Ulaanbaatar, was secretly planning. There might be some minor issues. Luoqiu glanced at the crowd, suddenly saying, But don't worry, I'll send a gift to your grandmother as compensation. Something small? Luoqiu said indifferently. You'd better not get too close to me. The longer you stay, the more people will see me. Zhang Qingrui cast a glance at Luoqiu. You're a good person. Who can't see you? Luochio himself also spent some time to figure out the problem of the sense of existence. Naturally, he was not in the mood to explain anything to her. Just leave me alone. Your grandmother's looking at me. You can go. Okay. Zhang Qingrui had to listen to Luochio for the time being with slight hesitation in her heart. However, Ms. Zhang could not rest assured. She kept looking back on the way to her grandmother. But even if not everyone noticed this, there were still some who noticed this scene. Who was this young man? How could he come unaccompanied by Ms. Zhang and Shi Shiji? Ms. Zhang kept looking back, like a little girl, as if she was reluctant to part with her lover. Where was he? He seemed to be here just now. How could he disappear all of a sudden? Young master, he should be Ms. Zhang's friend. We met in Guyu, Zhai last time. Chunyin suddenly whispered in Zhong Luochen's ear. Zhong Luochen glanced at his grandfather, who also noticed this scene. He made a gesture of silence, without saying anything, as if there was no ripple in his heart. While old Zhong was lost in thought, Zhang Lilinfeng saw her granddaughter walking towards them. Old Mrs. Zhang grasped her granddaughter's hand, smiling slightly. Don't you want to introduce your friend to me? Zhang Qingrui didn't want her old grandmother to know such weird things. She then said, "He's shy." She hoped that Luochio didn't hear it. She glanced at Luochio subconsciously, but she didn't see him. She finally saw the back of the girl who was let in, walking towards the orchestra. The young violinist in the orchestra suddenly walked out. Well, it was the intermission time. Seeing Zhang Qingrui's little movement, Zhang Lilinfeng suddenly said, "Dance with me for the first dance." Okay, Zhang Qingrui nodded. This was the last part before the toast. Fong Jiping saw Man appear in front of him, feeling very surprised, but Fong Ruchang's expression seemed to be a little unhappy. Fong Jiping loved this girl very much, but didn't dare to mention it to Fong Ruchang. However, Man was here, so Fong Jiping didn't have the heart to pretend not to know her. Under the pressure of Fong Ruchang's gaze, he pulled Man out. It was a small room for tableware in the banquet hall. Man, why are you here? Fong Jiping grasped Man's hands, asking with a smile. Looking at Fong Jiping, who was obviously happy because of her arrival, Man smiled sweetly subconsciously, but soon her face became serious. Xiao Man moved her lips and suddenly called out, "Baby tiger." The joy of his girlfriend's appearance seemed to freeze at this moment. He almost instinctively let go of her hands, but soon pretended not to know. "What did you say?" Sure enough, seeing Fong Jiping's reaction at this moment, Man opened her mouth, looking at Fong Jiping up and down seriously. "Jiping, look at this first. But you have to calm down." Man took a deep breath, taking out her mobile phone, clicking on the video from a strange public account in her WeChat moments, putting it in Fong Jiping's hand. "Your son, where is he?" It was clear enough to recognize the two people in the video, the heart-wrenching scream, crossing the guardrail, and finally falling into the water. The person who was struggling in the water. And that heartless man. Fong Jiping's hands trembled meaninglessly, and the video in front of him also swayed. I don't know who took the video, but the person in the video should be your father, right? Man hesitated. "Yesterday, didn't I say I met a drowning ant? It seems to be the one in the video." "Yang Ping. Jiping, do you know?" The mobile phone silently fell from Fong Jiping's hands to the ground, his eyes turning slightly red suddenly. When Man was about to pick up the phone, a person suddenly broke in, picking up the phone at a faster speed, and clicked on the video again. His face suddenly became panicked. How? Who took the video? Fong Ruchang. He looked at Fong Jiping's expression, seeing a girl he had never seen make Fong Jiping so happy. He had some guesses in his mind. She was somewhat angry that Fong Jiping was secretly dating such an ordinary girl behind her back. Or it was a kind of uneasiness that was out of his control. Fong Ruchang followed them, hiding outside the door to eavesdrop on their conversation, but he heard the conversation that made his hands and feet cold, and the faint sound of the video. Almost at all costs, Fong Ruchang was eager to find out what the video content that frightened him and made him fall into extreme uneasiness was. He exposed himself. You lied to me." Fong Jiping raised his head, looking at the uneasy man in front of him. Fong Ruchang wanted to say something, but what could he say? This video was like an irrefutable evidence. You lied to me. Fong Jipping suddenly went crazy, grabbing Fong Ruchang's collar with both hands, pushing him to the wall, yelling angrily, "You lied to me. What did you tell me? You said she left after taking your money, but you actually, how could you do this to her? How could you do this to her? You beast." He had never seen Fong Jipping so ruthless. That kind of anger seemed to be able to swallow him at any time. Fong Ruchang was more flustered. "Jipping, listen to me. I did this kind of thing because of a moment of confusion." A moment of confusion? A moment of confusion? Fong Jipping was extremely furious. That's a human life. How could you so easily? You beast. He directly grabbed Fong Ruchang and was about to walk out. What are you going to do?" Fong Ruchang was frightened. "You killed her on purpose. I won't let you go." Fong Ruchang was frightened. "Don't. Jipping. Even if you don't do it for the sake of the monk, at least remember who saved you from the hands of the human traffickers back then. In the past 20 years, have I ever treated you badly when I gave you books and taught you? I was just confused for a moment. I was afraid that this woman would take you away from me." Fong Jipping sneered. "You put it nicely. You're just afraid of letting the Wu family know your dirty deeds." Fong Ruchang knew that once he was pulled out of the door by Fong Jipping, everything would lead to the worst ending. He had no choice but to continue pleading. "Jipping, listen to me. I know I'm wrong this time, but I can make it up. How about this? I'll kneel down in front of Yang Ping and admit my mistake. We'll take good care of her. I promise I won't play any tricks again. Think about it. If this thing is exposed, what's the benefit for you? The Wu family won't let me go, but will they let you go? Think about it. I admit my mistake. We'll take care of Yang Ping together. You're still my son. You could go further on the road of being a violinist. If you like this girl, you can marry her. Everything can change for the better." Hearing this, Man couldn't help getting angry. How can you be so shameless?" Fong Ruchang hurriedly knelt down, begging bitterly, "For the sake of our 20 years of friendship, at least give me a chance to correct my mistake. I beg you, at least after today, let me admit my mistake in front of your mother, please. If your mother doesn't forgive me, then take me to the police station. I know I'm wrong. I really know I'm wrong." Looking at Fong Ruchang, who kept kowtowing on the ground, Fong Jipping suddenly became a little sad. He subconsciously looked at Man. Man glanced at Fong Jipping with a complicated expression, saying helplessly, "You decide. After the banquet, you have to go to the hospital with me. Tell me clearly what you've done." Fong Jipping gritted his teeth, lifting Fong Ruchang up with one hand, looking a little indifferent. "For the sake of your 20 years of upbringing me." Okay. Fong Ruchang didn't care about the change of status between them. He just thought that as long as Fong Jipping didn't act impulsively, there would still be a chance. He was too clear about Fong Jipping's indecisive character. "There will be a dance later. After the performance, I'll go with you immediately." Walking out of the tea room, Fong Ruchang, who was afraid that Fong Jipping would suddenly change his mind, promised again. Fong Jipping, with a fretful face, didn't respond. Man also kept silent. Fong Jipping tidied up his clothes. The MC of the banquet was now announcing the next dance in a heavy tone. "In this splendid evening, our famous conductor, Mr. Fong Ruchang, will lead his orchestra to present Edgar's Salute of Love to Mrs. Zhang." Applause, please. Thunderous applause. However, the lights were completely dimmed at this moment. In a huge banquet hall, only a beam of spotlight cast down, but it fell on the piano in the corner. No one knew when the piano changed its position. At this moment, the back of the piano was facing everyone, as if there was a person sitting there. However, the top of the piano completely blocked the person's appearance. In the dark, under the magnesium light, the position of the piano was particularly eye-catching. He had already begun to play, and a few notes slowly flowed out. A young and powerful voice slowly sounded through the venue's sound system. "Special program, please spare some time." The piano player said softly, "A short story. Since it was a special program, it should be arranged by the host of the banquet." Everyone listened attentively. even though the sound of the piano was a little jerky in the eyes of those who knew the ropes. Zhang Lilinfang glanced at her granddaughter, smiling softly. "What did you arrange for me?" Zhang Qingrue. Miss Zhang didn't arrange this program. She was only able to identify the owner of the voice with her excellent hearing. Just as she was about to say something in hopes of redeeming the situation, after a heavy note, the person playing the guqin began to speak again. In a small and quiet village, the woman's husband left her very early. He said he went out to work, but no one came back. Not long after, the woman heard that the man had a new family and a kid. The woman didn't know if her husband would come back, but she knew that she had lost contact with her husband. The sound of the zither played softly, as if it was whispering something. She went out to look for him for a long time. Finally, in despair, she returned to the quiet village where she lived. The woman looked at her kid, a very small kid. The kid was strong and had a pair of beautiful eyes. The woman's family persuaded her to remarry, but the condition was that she couldn't take the kid with her. She gave up. She planned to raise the kid alone. The music sped up. She took all the work alone, whether it was farm work or family management. Life was hard, but it passed day by day. When the woman thought that she could raise the kid in this way, the fickleness of fate tortured her again. Her kid, who was less than 3 years old, contracted a serious illness. To her, this was a burden that she could not bear. She borrowed money from her neighbors and tried every method she could think of, but she could not gather enough money to let her child survive the illness. The woman later made a decision that she regretted for the rest of her life. The piano suddenly slowed down. The village was not quiet later. I don't know when it started, but a few outsiders came to the village. They started a gambling business in the village. The small square dice had 6 different points: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These points seemed to have endless magic. They could make people earn more than a year's income overnight. They could also make people lose a year's income overnight. They seemed to be the woman's last hope. Accompanied by the piano, some people held their breath, as if they could already see the woman walking in with hope, but coming out with even greater despair. After all, this kind of thing happened too often. The people here had heard of such things, but they had never experienced it. They suddenly felt that in this environment accompanied by the piano, there was a sense of security across the glass when they heard such a story. This was a gamble, and the woman succeeded. What she didn't expect was that she had won enough money to cure her child from this gamble. Not long after, the woman's child appeared in front of her again, healthy and healthy. But life didn't seem to get better because of this. The soft voice turned into a low complaint again. The woman didn't know when it started. Maybe because of the first try, she got addicted to gambling. The money came too fast, so fast that the woman felt that her past hardships and labor were like a joke. Every time, when she walked into the gambling house, she had hope in her heart. Every time, when she walked out of the gambling house, there was no smile on her face. It suddenly accelerated. Suddenly one day, the woman began to win money after a long time. She became even more excited. She was so excited that she even forgot that her child was playing alone outside. No, the woman always remembered her son. She remembered every promise she had made to her son. She promised that when she had money, she would take him to the town to see the shadow play, and she would take him to the town's restaurant to have a sumptuous meal. It was cold, and she thought that with the money in hand, she could buy a new cotton-padded jacket for her child. When the child grew up, she thought that she could let the child go to school. She even dreamed that she could put the TV on at home all day long, and at night, she would hold her child and watch it while falling asleep. She wanted a refrigerator with a lot of popsicles. On the night of the summer solstice, she and her child sat in front of the door, one popsicle for each other, watching the sunset. She thought a lot, but she didn't expect that from that day on, she would never see her son again. That day, another strange man came to the village to do some abduction business. So, the child disappeared from this small village. The child was taken away, and the woman regretted it very much. She blamed herself. She had thought of murmuring softly. She even hated herself. She had once tried to commit suicide by hanging herself, but someone had saved her. She came back to life and wanted to see her child. That year, it snowed heavily. During the new year, the woman quietly carried a cloth bag and left the small village in the sound of firecrackers. Once she left for 20 years. Finally, the woman found her child. The story abruptly came to an end, but the audience had a feeling of discomfort. However, the story continued, and the sound of the piano didn't stop. After the child was taken away that day, he was taken to a faraway place by the traffickers. He saw many children like him, who were brought from other places. Boys and girls, some had their legs broken, some had their hands broken, and he was forced to beg for money on the street like these children. I don't know when it started, but the child began to resent the woman. He blamed her for ignoring him, and he blamed her for only knowing how to stay in the gambling stall full of evil. He carefully hid the rattle drum that the woman gave him. He loved and hated it. One day, a man bought a child from a human trafficker. The man had given the child a very, very good education and even made him an outstanding performer. 20 years later, the child had grown up. He had a girl he liked, and he had a career he loved. He seemed to have a very good life. And at this time, he saw the woman who lost him that year. He grew up, but the resentment hidden in his heart couldn't be eliminated. He didn't know how to face this woman. At this time, in front of the child, there was actually a choice. The man who adopted him said, "If you choose your former mother, you will lose everything." But the man also promised the child that if he didn't say all this, he could enjoy everything. He could even secretly take care of his mother. Yes, secretly. The young man fell silent here, and only the sound of his fingertips gradually became skilled. The story has reached this point, and I can't know the ending. What I know is that the woman didn't hear the child's voice in the gambling stall that year. And 20 years later, the child also didn't seem to hear the woman's voice on the stage of life. How similar it is. Richard Clayderman, Love Concerto. I hope you like it. The sound stopped, and the performance also stopped. The audience was silent, as if they were brought into a black and white old movie. No one seemed to be willing to break the silence first. Only Fong Jipping in the corner was now in tears, staring at the piano, choking with sobs. I am that child. Yin 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 yin. Chapter 177. Genius 1 Second Remember Love, Go, / Little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. I am that kid. Fong Jipping said to himself. The sentence so similar from the mouth of the zither player lingered in his mind and couldn't be erased. So similar? 20 years ago, it was his mother's idea. Today, he was here, considering Fong Ruchang's proposal. 20 years ago, Yang Ping wanted to give her son a better life after winning the money. 20 years later, he accepted Fong Ruchang's plea. He wanted to use this method to forgive Fong Ruchang's sins and continue his current life. He even thought that Yang Ping might compromise with him. So similar? In the silent banquet hall, Fong Jipping walked to the piano without anyone noticing. He couldn't see the person behind the piano through the cover. He didn't know how the person behind the cover knew such a story. He just stood here, in front of the piano, which attracted all the guests and even the host's attention. This story should have an ending. Fong Jipping opened his mouth slowly. His voice wasn't loud, but it was very clear. He looked at the cover. I'll tell you the ending. Jipping, what are you doing? Come back. Many people were only familiar with this young violinist, but Wu Qiubin knew that this was his nephew. Wu Qiubin was not sure why the Zhang family arranged such a performance to ruin the festive atmosphere at the banquet. He didn't intend to dig into it, but it wasn't good for Fong Jipping to jump out at this time. Wu Qiubin was anxious about how to mediate the situation, not knowing whether Zhang family had any opinion on this. Fong Jipping turned around, silently glancing at Wu Qiubin. Fong Jipping took a deep breath. Mr. Wu, I'm sorry for deceiving you for such a long time. I am actually the kid in this story, the kid who was taken out from the mountain. Wu Qiubin gave a start, blurting out, What nonsense are you talking about? Fong Jipping said seriously, Mr. Wu, I'm really sorry for deceiving you all these years. The Fong Ruchang you know is my adoptive father. He is a barren man. 20 years ago, he bought me and trained me to be a violinist, because he knew that the miss of the Wu family who eloped back then learned this. Wu Qiubin's eyes widened. He suddenly turned around, and saw Fong Ruchong in the corner of the crowd, revealing the domineering aura of decades of experience in the business world. Under Wu Qiubin's fierce gaze, Fong Ruchong's face turned ashen as he moved his line of sight. He clearly understood that from now on, he was finished. Fong Jiping gave a wry smile. It's so similar. This zither-playing gentleman's words are like a stick on my head. Yes, how similar. Just before this, I found out that the man who adopted me actually pushed my biological mother into the water behind my back. He was afraid that the appearance of my birth mother would reveal the deception of the past 20 years. But I, who knew all this, still thought that after today, I could live a good life. Fong Jiping raised his head, taking a deep breath. It's ridiculous. I resented for 20 years, but unconsciously, I became the kind of person that I resented. Fong Jiping took off his luxurious swallowtail coat, looking at the expressionless host of the banquet, Mrs. Zhang, and deeply bowed. Sorry, Mrs. Zhang. I spoiled your mood today. Later, I'll come to your door to apologize. Forgive me for not being able to give you a prepared performance. At this moment, I'm not the Fong Jiping who plays the violin. I'm just my mother's baby tiger. Sorry, I'm going to the hospital to see my mother. Seeing that Fong Jiping was about to leave, Wu Qiubin said in a low voice, Wait, you explain to me clearly. Wu Qiubin was furious. The Wu family was a reputable family. If such a scandal appeared on such an occasion, it was imaginable that the rich circle would laugh at them tomorrow. Even at the banquet of the Zhang family, he couldn't suppress the anger of being deceived for such a long time. Okay, unexpectedly, old Madame Zhang, who had been silent and showed a calm and scary face, suddenly said, Good, sonorous and forceful. Zhang Lilianfang suddenly stood up, supported by Zhang Qingrui, only to hear the old woman say firmly, This is the most sincere and best gift I've received today. Family meeting, the relationship between heaven and earth, is the most beautiful thing in the world. Go ahead. If anyone stops you from leaving today, it's me and this old woman's fault. In the eyes of all the high officials and nobles, this old woman was a terrible bodhisattva. Her dignity was enough to completely suppress Wu Qiubin's anger. But in Zhang Qingrui's eyes, these words were not unexpected. She knew that in this story, this kind of family not meeting was deeply rooted in her grandmother's heart. It touched a string in her grandmother's heart that had not been plucked for many years. At this time, Zhang Lilianfang looked at Fong Jiping. I don't want you to apologize. I just want you to call your mother. Fong Jiping moved his lips, bowing deeply. Thank you. While saying, Fong Jiping also turned around, looking at the top of the piano. When he was about to say thank you, he didn't know when it started, but there seemed to be no one here. The seats were also empty. He didn't have time to think about it. He just wanted to visit his mother in the hospital, hurriedly rushing out of the banquet hall. A large number of guests made a way for him. Who dared to stop Fong Jiping from going out because of Zhang Lilianfang's words? This old woman, who claimed to be an old woman, a female bodhisattva who could turn the whole city upside down, clearly meant, Fong Jiping is under my protection. Let's continue the banquet. I'm really happy today. I haven't been so happy for a long time. Zhang Lilianfang now said in a low voice, Qingrui, what's next? Let's continue. Although it was a new beginning, it still needed time to reorganize. The MC of the banquet was a famous person specially invited from the TV station, who was good at saving the situation. Well, relatives meet, the relationship between heaven and earth. This is the most interesting sentence I've heard today. The MC said loudly, I believe everyone is like me, still immersed in the aftertaste of this story. Why don't we calm down and look at the relatives around us? There are many unpleasant things happening in the world, but at this moment, we have happiness and happiness around us. Why don't we look at the people around us more? Zhang Lilianfang sat down again, smiling faintly. This MC is not bad. What could Zhang Qingrui say? She just held her grandmother's palms silently, saying softly, Grandma, I'll accompany you all my life. Okay? Silly girl. Zhang Lilianfang said softly, suddenly glancing at the piano, although there was no one there. Your classmate seems to have left. Ah, Zhang Lilianfang smiled. I'm old, but my eyesight is still good. When you were playing the piano, I could see something from your expression. Well, this kid is good. What else could Miss Zhang say? Being willing to think in a good way is also a good thing, right? But Grandma, don't think this guy is good. He's very dangerous. Hurriedly escaping from the hotel, Fong Ruchong only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Fong Jipping, you bastard. You've wasted my years of food. Thinking of the video that was taken by someone, thinking that his reputation would be completely ruined after today, he was almost desperate. He hurriedly walked in the underground parking of the hotel, but before he reached his car, he was stopped by someone. Wu! Fong Ruchong looked at Wu Qiubin, who appeared in front of him, and a young man beside him in fright. Fong Ruchong stepped back in fright. What do you want to do? Wu Qiubin sneered. I can't hurt Fong Jipping. He's under the care of an old lady, so I don't plan to hurt him in the future. But you won't be so lucky. That young man walked to the front of Fong Ruchong in a split second, giving him a heavy punch on his abdomen. This man, over 50 years old, who lived like a prince, how could he bear such a heavy blow, falling down painfully on the ground? Wu Qiubin's cold voice was heard. Break his hand, I'll make you spit out everything you've got from us in the past 20 years. My sister was really blind that year. She should have followed such a shameless guy. No. Chapter 178. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, /go, /little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. 2 members of the orchestra were missing. However, they were all experienced performers. Although Fong Jipping had left and Fong Ruchong had disappeared suddenly, the members of the orchestra discussed and decided to finish the next performance. Of course, this was requested by Ms. Zhang Qingrui. They couldn't find another orchestra to replace them. Besides, on this occasion, it would be too perfunctory if they could only play music through the sound system. The next part was dancing. This was a Western-style banquet, so the first dance should be performed by the host. Zhang Qingrui came to Mrs. Zhang. There was no male in Zhang's family, so it was a bit weird for her to wear such a combination. Therefore, Zhang Qingrui specially changed into a man's swallowtail coat. The guests consciously created a circular space for the two of them to slowly step into the rhythm. Outside the crowd, the club boss, who was once again caught in people's perception barrier, quietly took a glass of water. It was a long story. Actually, he would feel thirsty after telling the whole story. Master, Fong Ruchong was taken away by Wu Qiubin in the parking lot. Luochio nodded. He suddenly looked at Black Soul number 9, saying, I've just said that I'll give Zhang Qingrui's grandmother a gift. Black Soul number 9 was dumbfounded. He didn't know why his new master mentioned this at this moment. However, Luochio snapped his fingers at this time. Black Soul number 9 in a black robe gradually removed the black smoke on his body and put on a black and white swallowtail coat, showing himself completely. His hair was combed neatly into a slick-back hairstyle. This was a young face that couldn't be considered handsome, but his complexion was slightly paler. Looking at Black Soul number 9's puzzled expression, Luochio didn't say anything. He just took a white napkin from the side, folding it in his hand. After folding it, he slowly stuffed it into the chest pocket of Black Soul number 9's dress. Luochio patted the pocket with a smile, making it tidy, saying indifferently, Go, dance with Zhang Lilianfang. Consider it a gift from me to her, but you can't say anything. Black Soul number 9 was stunned. Vaguely, he felt that his new master's order had some meaning that he couldn't figure out. But to have a dance with Zhang Lilianfang on the dance floor? Why did he have the urge to jump for joy? He slowly walked through the crowd, completely oblivious to the surprised gazes around him. She just took the place of Zhang Qingrui and appeared in front of Zhang Lilianfang in a twinkling of an eye. Zhang Qingrui, who had just finished a spin, was surprised to see a figure suddenly appear, interrupting her dance. Who was so insensible to walk out at this time? Even in the Western dance parties, there was etiquette for exchanging partners, but obviously not in the first dance. Unexpectedly, her grandmother stared blankly at the young man who had just walked out. Her gaze suddenly became blurry. Without saying anything, Black Soul number 9 picked up Li Lanfang's palm gently and approached her. Subconsciously, Old Madame Zhang didn't even resist. Instead, she followed his footsteps and walked slowly on the dance floor. She didn't have any beautiful steps. What kind of emotion was that? Zhang Qingrui had never seen her grandmother's. Infatuation? Or something else? She suddenly had a feeling that she couldn't blend into the dance steps of this man and her grandmother. She even felt that at this moment, all the people here seemed to be superfluous. No words were spoken. Black Soul number 9 and Zhang Lilianfeng just looked at each other silently until a waltz was finished. Another one was played at this moment. After the first dance, it was time for the others to dance. The guests also began to spin into the dance floor with their own dance steps. Zhang Lilianfeng, who was immersed in an unforgettable touch, felt as if she had returned to decades ago when she was still a young girl. However, she didn't know when, but there was no one around her. It was like a dream. This dance had already ended and the crowd had dispersed. The old madam was disappointed and frustrated. She looked around aimlessly, but could not find the man who had suddenly barged in. Grandma, Zhang Qingrui, came to Zhang Lilianfeng's side. That man is... Zhang Lilianfeng shook her head subconsciously with a complicated expression. She said to herself, "This may be the best birthday present I've received today. I'll send a present to your grandmother as a compensation." Unconsciously, Ms. Zhang thought of the mysterious classmate who had once said something casually. Could it be? Fang Jiping rushed all the way to the hospital accompanied by his girlfriend, Man. Perhaps he was timid. Standing outside the hospital, Fang Jiping didn't dare to go in. Man grasped Fang Jiping's hand. "You dare to tell so many people about your family background at the banquet. Don't you dare to go in here?" Fang Jiping smiled bitterly, taking a deep breath. Then he held Man's hand and walked into the hospital. But when they came to the ordinary ward, they didn't see Yang Ping, who was lying on the sickbed. Not only Yang Ping, but the bag was also gone. How could it be? She was still here when I left. She didn't wake up. Man gave a start, looking around in a flurry. Fang Jiping saw a nurse in the corridor who intended to come in for a visit. He hurriedly walked up to her and asked, "Miss, may I know where the woman on the bed is?" "Oh, she was still here when I went out. Where did she go?" The nurse was also confused. At this time, a kid lying on the sickbed reading a book suddenly said, "The aunt just woke up and said she was going to find her son. She went out by herself." "Well," Fang Jiping gave a start, looking at his girlfriend subconsciously. Man hurriedly grasped Fang Jiping's hand. "She shouldn't have gone far. Let's look for her separately." No, she wasn't in the hospital. Neither was she outside the hospital. Fang Jiping and Man still couldn't find Yang Ping's whereabouts, even though they were sweating profusely in the crowd. "She's alone and in poor health. Where'd she go?" Fang Jiping knocked on the roadside tree trunk, looking anxious. "Selling popsicles, delicious old popsicles, selling popsicles, delicious old popsicles. Sir, miss, do you want some popsicles?" A young man wearing a peaked cap and a small thermal box on his body shouted all the way. At this time, he came to Fang Jiping and Man. How could Fang Jiping have the mood to eat old popsicles? He was irritated and wanted to drive this young man away, but suddenly his heart moved. "Give me 2. But young man, let me ask you something. You haven't seen an Ani before. She should be wearing a patient's clothes, right? She's thin and a bit hunchbacked." "Yes. She just bought me 2 popsicles. Where is she?" Fang Jiping suddenly grabbed the young man's hands and asked excitedly. The young man pointed to the front. "Well, I just met her at the corner. I don't know if she's gone far." "Thank you." Saying this, Fang Jiping ran quickly towards the direction pointed by the young man. The young man hurriedly said, "Sir, you haven't given me the change." "Don't." Xiao Man quickly followed up. This time she looked back at the little brother selling ice lolly. She suddenly stopped and hesitated for a moment. Looking at the little brother selling popsicles, she frowned and said, "Mister, have I seen you somewhere before?" "Have you?" The young man pressed the peaked cap, chuckling. "I don't think so." "Ah, that gentleman has gone far." Mammon looked back. It was true. "I remember. He seems to be the young man who pasted the flyers downstairs yesterday." She hurriedly turned back. "Where is he?" The aunt sat under the tree. There was an office building nearby, so there was no one at this time. It was very quiet. When Fong Jipping ran there, he saw Yang Ping lowering her head, holding the shabby old cloth bag. She gently stroked it, seeming to say something. Step by step, he walked to the front of Yang Ping. He heard Yang Ping's words. In fact, what she was saying wasn't anything special. It was just a very old song. Many women in Qianshan village knew how to sing this song to coax their children to sleep. She seemed not to see someone in front of her, completely immersed in her own world. She gently shook the cloth bag in her hand, then took out a small wavy doll from her arms, shaking it gently. Hua, sleep, my Hua, good boy. Seeing Yang Ping lowering her head and kissing the cloth bag, Fong Jipping's eyes turned red instantly. He squatted on the ground, holding Yang Ping's palm with trembling hands, deeply sticking it to his face, choking with sobs. Yang Ping also seemed not to see it. The song in her mouth didn't stop. She was obsessed. You don't recognize me. Fong Jipping raised his head, saying with difficulty. The aunt seemed to stop for a while, tilting her head. She suddenly looked at Fong Jipping, seeming to be hesitant. Finally, she took out an old popsicle that hadn't been opened. Don't cry, kid. I'll treat you to a popsicle. But you can only eat one, and I want to save the other one for my Hua. It had already melted and became wet. Reaching for the popsicle, Fong Jipping suddenly knelt on the ground. Holding it, Fong Jipping lowered his head and curled up his whole body. His head lowered on the bricks on the ground, and he cried out in pain. He said, Mom, don't cry, kid. Yang Ping reached out her hand, touching Fong Jipping's head gently, as if touching the cloth bag in her arms. Not knowing why, there was a trace of smile on her face. But she was gently humming the song in the mountain, touching Fong Jipping's head, touching the cloth bag in her arms, as if there was one more person in her world. Chapter 179. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, /go/small. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. The banquet didn't come to an end until 12 o'clock in the evening. Apart from a small interlude in the middle, there wasn't anything strange in general. The guests started to leave in an orderly manner. But old Zhong came to Zhang Lilianfang quietly at the end. Of course, he wasn't alone, and Mrs. Zhang was accompanied by her granddaughter. The two oldest people at the banquet took a few steps away and talked in private. What do you want to say? Zhang Lilianfang's voice was light but sharp. I'm an ordinary person. I'll die no matter what. If I don't get enough sleep, I may die. Lanfang, your birthday has just passed. Don't say that. Old Zhong sighed. Mrs. Zhang said seriously, Old Zhong, what do you want to say? Old Zhong pondered. Did you forget to announce something today? Zhang Lilianfang said indifferently. I didn't forget anything. I just changed my mind temporarily. Old people are fickle. What's wrong? Originally, the two of them had a private agreement. That was, the Zhong family and the Zhang family would cooperate and announce the cooperation between the two families at this banquet. They would set up a brand new company in this city. Of course, there would be something more intimate that would be announced. However, the Zhang family didn't mention anything until the banquet ended. Although it was a private agreement between the two of them, they didn't mention it to anyone. But Zhong Gaoshan had lived for dozens of years. Besides being stubborn, he was also a man who kept his promise. So he was dissatisfied with Zhang Lilianfang's behavior, which was similar to going back on her words. Lanfang, this is what we've talked about. How can you overturn it just because you're fickle? Zhong Gaoshan couldn't help frowning. Zhang Lilianfang sneered suddenly, saying, Old Zhong, when did I say I'll go back on my words? Could it be that if I don't announce it today, it won't do? Or do you think I have to listen to you because I'm a widow? Old Zhong hurriedly said, That's not what I mean. Alas, look at me. I've been living for dozens of years. I'm always confused when I'm anxious. Don't blame me. Let's call it a day. Zhang Lilianfang said, I will arrange the cooperation between the two clans. It would be too informal to talk about this kind of cooperation at a banquet. Moreover, the company hadn't even started its preparations yet. When the preparations are almost done, we'll hold another press conference. At this point, Old Zhong had nothing more to say. But Old Zhong suddenly asked, Just now, who was the one who danced with you? He looks familiar to me. A confused look flashed across Madame Zhang's eyes, but she soon returned to normal. I don't know either, she said in an unapproachable manner. After saying that, Zhang Lilanfang waved at Zhang Qingrui and left with her. Zhong Luochen and the others quickly walked in front of old Master Zhong. Cheng Yun hurriedly said, "Grandpa, I'll go prepare the car." He knew that these people must have something to say, and it would be best if he was not present. Even though he really wanted to hear what they were going to say next, he knew that the Zhong family needed him to know when to advance and when to retreat. "Go ahead." Old Zhong nodded. Old Zhong sat down, still holding the crutch in his hand, remaining silent for a long time. He suddenly tilted his head. Old Luo, who was waiting beside him, hurriedly bent down. "Old Luo, I'm very concerned about the young man who danced with Lan Fong just now. Do you have any way to find out about him?" "Yes, Grandpa." Old Luo nodded. "I also feel familiar, but I can't recall who he is." Old Zhong then looked at Zhong Luochun. "Today we were supposed to announce the cooperation between our two families. Furthermore, I will take advantage of this cooperation to announce my engagement with Miss Zhang." Zhong Luochen gave a start, saying with astonishment, "Grandpa, why didn't I know that before?" Old Zhong smiled. "It's just a private discussion between me and Miss Zhang's grandmother. Miss Zhang is very nice. She's taking care of the family business at a young age. Don't you like her?" "Not bad," Zhong Luochun said indifferently. Not to mention liking, he didn't have any interest in anyone now. Maybe he had a little interest in her not long ago, but now, she was just a woman with a good appearance. Zhong Luochen responded quickly. "Grandpa, you just said originally?" Old Zhong said, "Well, she said she changed her mind temporarily, and old people are fickle." The old master smiled. "I said that women are fickle. It's been decades, but she hasn't changed at all." "Grandpa, what do you need me to do?" Old Zhong ordered. "During this period, you should prepare for the new company well. In addition, you should visit Miss Zhang more often. I know you're good enough, so you'd better impress her." "Okay." In the living room, Ren Xiling received a phone call. She glanced at Luochio, who just came out of the shower and was sitting on the balcony to enjoy the breeze. Then she walked to the kitchen. She whispered, "Mouse Chong, what's the matter? Have you found the person I asked you to find?" "No, but Grandpa, do you want me to do what you asked me to do in the ice room last time? It's been so many days. Today I specially went up to check. It seems that he moved away, and the house is empty." "Empty?" Rin Xiling was stunned. Yi Yin went missing these days, and King Kong, who was under surveillance, moved away. Sure enough, there was a connection between them. "Yes, it's really empty." "Well, you don't have to stay there," Ren Xiling whispered. "I'll pay you for your hard work tomorrow. If there's any news about the search, inform me immediately." Then she hung up the phone. Ren Xiling held her hands and thought for a while. She had no clue, so she opened the fridge to make a glass of ice water. But as soon as she opened the freezer, Ren Xiling was stunned. She subconsciously looked toward the balcony. "Hey, boss, when did we have a box of popsicles?" "Old popsicles?" Luochio walked over, took out one from the box, tore the package, and ate it. "Well, I suddenly wanted to eat, so I bought more." "Isn't this too much?" Ren Xiling counted. "Dozens of popsicles, brother." Although she said so, but seeing Sub-Editor Ren tore one and put it in her mouth without any pressure, he couldn't help but laugh. "Foodie, I think you can finish it in a week." Ren Xiling rolled her eyes, stretched out her hand, and pretended to knock on Luochio's forehead. With the popsicle in her mouth, she walked into her room while looking at her phone. Then Luochio returned to his room and locked the door. The next second, Luochio turned into Boss Luo and appeared in a small and simple hotel. Looking at Yi Yin, who was lying on the bed and looking much better than before, Luochio looked at Yu Yi with appreciation. "Thank you for your hard work." Yu Yi said softly, "Mr. Yi should be able to move in a few days." Luochio nodded. "Tomorrow should be the appointed time with Yang Taizi, right?" Yu Yi nodded. Luochio pondered for a while. "Let Tianzi look after Yi Yin for me first. It shouldn't take long for you to go with me." "Well, I won the prize." Luochio looked at the popsicle that had been eaten up, revealing the words "one more" on the stick. He smiled. "Good luck. It should be a good sign, right?" Yin 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 yin. Chapter 180. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. It was a place that couldn't even be called a village. There were only a few houses made of blue bricks, which could only be counted as a few families living in it. It was barely electrified, which proved that it lived in the modern civilization. Luocio looked at the surrounding mountains. The mountain was full of water vapor. In the early morning, the water vapor began to evaporate, turning into dense white fog, slowly rising here. He saw Yang Taizi under an old banyan tree in front of this real small village. The old Taoist didn't come alone. There was another person beside him, a young man called Jean Eyre, his disciple. Yang Taizi looked like he was meditating. His disciple didn't have the ability to meditate. After seeing someone from afar, he woke up Yang Taizi, who was meditating. The old Taoist opened his eyes. After a few steps, he met with Luocio, saying, "Boss Luo is indeed a man of his word. I thought I would have to wait here for 1 or 2 days." The old Taoist was patient. He had waited for 10 years since the mountain was taken away. 1 or 2 days wouldn't make a difference. Luocio said, "It's not our rule to keep the guests waiting. Can we start now?" Luocio looked at the clouds. He breathed the air of the mountain all the way here. In fact, in the early morning, the air exhaled more carbon dioxide, but maybe because of the high humidity, it had a fresh and moist feeling. It was said that cultivators ate wind and drank dew, inhaling the aura of heaven and earth. Anyway, Luocio couldn't feel anything in the aura. Besides, could aura really be eaten? "I'm ready." Yang Taizi hurriedly cupped his hands and said, putting himself in a very humble position. His disciple looked at him and felt it was incredible. Yang Taizi picked Jean Eyre up when he was very young, saying that he had wisdom and spirituality and was a suitable person for cultivation. But he was only a few years old. How could he know what cultivation was? The only motivation was to be able to eat his fill by following this old man. However, as the years passed, the ignorant orphan grew up and gradually saw this complicated world clearly. Only then did he realize that what he had bumped into was the so-called creation that was passed down by the Taoists. He had seen Yang Taizi rushing up the mountain, splitting boulders with his wooden sword, flying paper cranes, and puffing clouds and smoke on the rocks of the mountain. After more than 10 years of nurturing, she had long regarded Yang Taizi as a close relative, not to mention that he had miraculous abilities, which made him even better than a relative. His master was the heavens. Looking at Yang Taizi's submissive attitude, the young disciple suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. It would be fine if they were Taoist priests with a mortal temperament, but they were just 2 young people who were about the same age as him. "Master, you said that the people who came to help were these 2? The young disciple said in a doubtful tone, "Even you can't defeat the black water python spirit on the mountain. Do these 2 people have the ability to do so?" This silly disciple, Yang Taizi had taught Jean Eyre since he was young, so he knew Jean Eyre's mind very well, although he knew that he just couldn't stand it and was defending him. Yang Taizi moved his lips, intending to say something, but Luocio suddenly said in a low voice, "We can't defeat it either, so we're just helpers." "You're too polite." Yang Taizi could only take the opportunity to say, "After all, we're just helpers. How can I be so arrogant? Jean Eyre, they're guests, not to mention they're here to help us. How can you be so rude?" "Ah, so it's like this?" Jean Eyre gave a start, thinking that his master was right. It was normal to be polite when people came to help him out of kindness. Jean Eyre hurriedly walked to Luocio and Yang Taizi. Although he was dressed like a modern young man, he was still a young Taoist, so he acted like a Taoist. Jean Eyre bowed to Luocio without any hesitation. "I'm sorry." He chuckled with a sincere expression on his face. If he didn't have the impetuosity of the city, apologizing whenever he made a mistake, his life would be much easier. Luocio nodded, saying nothing. He walked to the old Taoist priest's side and climbed up together with him. Luocio didn't have much contact with Yang Taizi, but he felt that Yang Taizi was a person who came out from the secular world. "I haven't told this naughty disciple about your shop." On the way, Yang Taizi seemed to be restless, explaining something to Luocio. "This kid's nature is not bad, but he's a bit casual." Luocio looked at Yang Taizi curiously. I don't think your disciple cares about this. Why do you care more than him? Yang Taizi subconsciously glanced at Jean Eyre, who followed behind him. But he saw Jean Eyre stopped under a pear tree, thinking about picking pears to eat. Yang Taizi couldn't help being stunned. Luochio said indifferently, I don't know much about the life of you Taoists, but this little Taoist is the one who's really outside the secular world. Yang Taizi couldn't help blushing, but it was a happy thing that his disciple who had been with him for many years was praised. Yang Taizi sighed in his heart, bowing to Luochio. Thank you for your advice. You're a free person. What should he say? Could it be that such a small matter had to escalate to a quarrel, and then escalate to a fight before it could be considered satisfying? But it was amazing that this kind of small principle that was often taught in kindergarten could make these Taoists who looked like living immortals feel refreshed, as if they drank a bottle of divine dew. This feeling was really cheap and ridiculous. Learned in childhood, forgotten in youth, found in old age, and treated as a treasure. Life was like this. Far away, in Ulaanbaatar, in the ruins of the huge underground palace. At the edge of the big pit formed by the sinking, a team of people were climbing down with various tools. The terrain below became messy, and there was no flat bottom for the helicopter to land, so they could only use this inefficient method. Of course, it had taken them nearly a day. In fact, they had already set up camp at the edge of the big pit. In the camp, a foreign man of about 40 years old, wearing a fur coat, was drinking the local milk tea, not used to it. This was a tough job. Compared with the Hawaii full of sunshine, beaches, and beauties, this desolate place was simply heaven and hell. However, the company had lost an entire team of treasure hunters here, and they still found nothing. He had no choice but to temporarily leave the charming beach in Hawaii. Mr. Baho, Master Verawa is back. A valiant man wearing a combat suit and holding a machine gun said respectfully as he opened the tent flap and walked in. Baho stood up unwillingly, putting on his mink hat. Before coming out, he suddenly ordered, "Throw away these disgusting things and make me a pot of coffee. Tut, when can I leave this nasty and damn place?" Chapter 181. Genius remembers love in 1 second/small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. His body was wrapped in white cloth, revealing his bare arms and bare feet. The mark between his eyebrows was not a red dot, but a black mark, similar to the mark of exorcism. In this windy and cold prairie, the young monk with a sallow complexion in his early 30s was standing on the edge of the big pit. He suddenly knelt on the ground, spreading out his palms and placing them on the ground as if he was praying. Beho hurried over, but he did not disturb the monk's action at this time. It was not until the white-robed monk finished his set of movements and stood up that he politely called out, "Master Verawa." Verawa, who turned around, had a pair of deep eyes. Verawa was unusually handsome. In Beho's eyes, this young monk who was less than 30 years old had a kind of neutral beauty unique to the West. But few people knew that this Master Verawa was 70 years old this year. Few people, of course, did not include Beho. At this time, Master Verawa picked up the thing wrapped in cloth and slowly spread it out, revealing some scattered metal fragments in front of Beho. Beho said, "Master Verawa, what's this?" "It's the magic weapon that my junior fellow apprentice, Mu Jianzuan, always carries," Verawa said indifferently. "I found it in the soil below. Mu Jianzuan is really dead." Beho said with a dignified face, "The people who searched in the morning found some bomb wreckage. Is it because of this?" Master Verawa shook his head. "No, the magic weapon was broken. My junior fellow apprentice, Mu Jianzuan, may have fought with someone here. Judging from the degree of the magic weapons broken, I'm afraid he encountered a powerful enemy." Beho was quite disapproving. With Master Verawa here, no powerful enemy can be defeated. Snade and a group of people died here because they underestimated the enemy. Besides, they did not bring the best equipment when they set off. Verawa glanced at Beho indifferently and did not discuss this issue further. The layman could never see the knack when looking at the expert. However, he He did agree with the second half of Beiho's words. The weapons in the modern world were indeed powerful. There were very few individuals in this world who could block a powerful RPG head-on. Beiho suddenly muttered, "If we really encountered an enemy, I'm more worried that the treasure in the underground palace has been taken away." He looked at Master Verawa and said, "The company invested a lot of money in this project, and now we have lost an elite team. If we don't gain anything, the management will not be satisfied." Verawa suddenly said, "I can feel that there is still some pure power left underground. In the East, these things are called ley lines. This was an extremely mystical power of the earth. Perhaps it was because of the power of the earth that caused the entire underground palace to collapse. More than 1,000 years ago, there was already someone who could use the power of the earth so exquisitely. It's really inconceivable." Bawo frowned and said, "Master, do you mean that we can't mine this underground palace again?" Verawa said indifferently, "If there is still something hidden underground, you can mine it casually. It may cause the remaining power of the earth to erupt again. If there are still treasures left, I'm not sure if they can be completely preserved under this eruption. After all, it's not wrong to be careful." Beiho looked at the whole big pit doubtfully. It was impossible for him to go back empty-handed like this. "Well, Master, thank you for your hard work." Beiho nodded and said quickly, "I've asked people to prepare milk tea from the prairie. Master, please go back and rest first." Seeing that Verawa had left, the sturdy man beside Beiho came forward and said, "Sir, do we really listen to this guy and give up mining temporarily?" Beiho squinted slightly and said, "Later, you take people and go around from the other side. Be gentle and don't let others find you, especially Verawa." "Sir, Verawa is not on my side." Beiho frowned and said, "But Snader is my subordinate. Some people may hope that I get nothing this time. Go ahead and tell me immediately if you find anything. Also, send someone to watch Verawa. If he leaves the tent, tell me immediately." "Yes, sir." Yang Taizi's Taoist field was hidden in the mountains. Luochio curiously looked around, wondering if the satellite cloud picture could capture the surrounding environment clearly. But he gave up after looking at his mobile phone and found no signal at all. It took him about half a day. At noon, Luochio vaguely saw some buildings under a cliff in the clouds under Yang Taizi's instruction. In the middle of the surrounding cliffs, there seemed to be a natural cave that was built as a stronghold. There was no way to climb the mountain, but there were some iron chains that were fished down from above. Walking to the iron chains, Luochio shook the rusty iron that had been eroded by wind and rain. It was quite interesting. He asked Yang Taizi, "Taoist priest, there are some families at the foot of the mountain. We occasionally see some old cottages along the way. Haven't they been discovered all these years?" Yang Taizi smiled. "If no one discovered it, I wouldn't have been able to climb the mountain. It's just that the people at the foot of the mountain feared ghosts and rarely contacted with the outside world. In modern times, who would want to live in such a steep mountain? Capable young people all want to live in prosperous places. Those families at the foot of the mountain are all old people who have lived here all their lives. They just don't want to leave. After a few years, I'm afraid they won't be here anymore." Saying this, Yang Taizi suddenly sighed. "Humans are the wisest of all creatures. It's not wrong at all. I've been practicing Taoism for dozens of years. If we were in ancient times, we would be eccentric and superior. But in modern times, is there anything that modern science can't do? For example, weapons. Even if I can dodge it, I can't take it. Although I have martial arts that ordinary people don't have, it's much easier for ordinary people to get martial arts than me. No. Yang Taizi heaved a long sigh. "It's long gone. I've been seeking immortality for dozens of years. I don't know if I can get in the end. But I know my destiny. I know where my lifespan will end. If I have 100 lives, one day is one day less. Even if you don't count it, you know the number is decreasing all the time. That kind of fear is torture. Ordinary people only care about whether they can live well tomorrow. They don't have to worry about food, clothing, housing, and transportation." Looking at Yang Taizi's sentiments, Luochio couldn't help thinking of the lost traditional skills and culture. Chapter 182. Genius remembers love in 1 second/small. Shoah Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The story of seeking immortality was in Stories and Rumors. Now it was right in front of his eyes, a living example. Luochio didn't think about Chinshuyu, because she should be someone who touched the edge of immortality. But theoretically, he was also a person with immortality. But this kind of immortality was different from Yang Taizi's and Chinshuyu's. Not to mention that it was too easy to get. He felt it was inexplicable even now. Some people didn't even enter the door after decades of hard practice. Some people still drifted in the world after entering the door, experiencing thrilling life after life. But some people walked on this road smoothly. Yang Taizi, Qin Shiyu, Luochio himself. Luochio looked at the old Taoist temple built against the mountain above his head. Suddenly, he had a similar feeling. Some people were destined to be rich. They were born in a rich family and didn't have to worry about food and clothing. Some people were born in a poor family. They worked hard for half of their lives and finally achieved something. Some people were still struggling among the masses. No matter seeking immortality or wealth, the composition of the members was the same. Yang Taizi put away his feelings. The black water snake monster hides by day and comes out at night. It's noon now, a good time to go up. Luochio nodded. He let go of the rusty iron chain in his hand, feeling it was unnecessary to use it. The club boss slightly raised his head, his body floating above the ground. At first, he was only a few inches above the ground, then 1 foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, and kept rising. The last disciple of the old Taoist suddenly opened his eyes wide. He had seen his master's ability of climbing a mountain as if walking on flat ground. He felt it was something that could only be learned in half of his life. But looking at the strange phenomenon of floating, he was afraid it would take more than half of his life. Even if he spent his whole life, he might not be able to do it. No wonder his master Yang Taizi was so polite. Not because he wanted to help, but because he really had the ability. Staring blankly at Luochio and Yi, who had already risen more than 10 meters, Jean-Eyre looked at his master, who also revealed a hint of envy, and subconsciously said, "Master, if I beg him, can I learn this kind of cloud riding skill?" Hearing this, Yang Taizi didn't feel good. However, this disciple's age had increased, but his mental age had not yet increased. It was too awkward to say that Jean-Eyre was just a child, but he was indeed a child. Yang Taizi felt bitter in his heart. Although he didn't say anything, his dignity as a teacher made him say in a low voice, "You haven't even learned the basic skills, and you want to reach the sky in 1 step? Have you forgotten how I usually teach you?" Jean-Eyre's face reddened. He lowered his head and said, "You have to follow the prescribed order, 1 step at a time." Yang Taizi nodded, pulling the iron chain with one hand and kicking with both legs. His body seemed to slide up the chain. Although he was relying on external objects, it was still very cool. When the two of them climbed up, Luochio was already looking at this suspended Taoist temple. It was unknown when this Taoist temple was built, but as far as the eye could see, it was a wooden frame structure. Holes were cut in the steep cliff, and suspended beams were inserted as the foundation. The pavilions were connected by plank walkways. The back of the building was against the steep cliff and looked down into the deep valley. The Taoist temple didn't look big, but it was actually quite magnificent due to its ingenious workmanship. Luochio looked at the distribution of the small buildings in the Taoist temple, which were zigzagging and intertwining. Although it was small, it didn't feel like a small place. Instead, the layout was compact and interdependent, which could be called exquisite. The person who designed it seems to have put a lot of thought into it. Luochio sighed. The structure here is really exquisite. Even a knowledgeable Miss Servant Girl couldn't help but take a few more glances at it. Listening to their praises, Yang Taizi, who almost lost his face, felt that he got back some face. He smiled and said, "Boss Luo, if you like it, I welcome you to stay here for a while." Luochio just nodded and didn't say anything. Yi called softly beside Luochio. Wisps of grayish-white fog suddenly seeped out of the Taoist temple. The fog spread on the ground as if it was spreading out from the inside, but it was in a rolling state and gradually became thicker. Be careful. The black water snake monster is coming out. Young Taizi hurriedly made a gesture with one hand and took a wooden sword from his apprentice with the other. A figure slowly walked out from the gray-white fog. It should be a human figure. Luochio counted the monsters he had seen, including the mysterious long Shua. He could count them with one hand. But it was nothing new for a monster to turn into a human figure. Of course, except for the mantis monster he met at the beginning, this python monster was probably the second one. Speaking of a snake monster, it was easy to associate it with a white snake monster in a fairy tale. Well, this black water snake monster was also a female. The fog gradually dispersed. The black water snake monster in Yang Taizi's mouth now looked like a woman in a black palace dress. She looked about 20 or 30 years old, but in a palace dress. Luochio felt it was somewhat out of character. But thinking that this black water snake monster had a history of hundreds of years, it was reasonable to say that she kept the ancient appearance. Black water, it's been 10 years. You robbed my mountain gate. Today I'll settle the shame of these 10 years with you. Yang Taizi shouted with a stern face. Wasn't it true? Immortal Taoism had declined. Yang Taizi was one of the few disciples who still had a primitive blessed land. However, his blessed land was snatched away by a monster who was only a few hundred years old. If it were 200 years ago, no, it would be impossible 100 years ago. But it just happened. These years, Yang Taizi hid outside. He only dared to say a word in a modern Taoist chat group for half a year for fear of being known by others. He was so depressed. The woman in the black palace dress, black water snake monster, said indifferently, "You found 2 helpers? No wonder you're so stubborn. Did you forget you were scared ***less when you left 10 years ago? Your immortal Xian Huan Zhen Dao is just SOSO. Yang Taizi glared at her and said angrily, "How can my immortal Xian Huan Zhen Dao be slandered by an evil cultivator like you? Immortal Xian Huan Zhen Dao is broad and profound. It can only be said that I'm not good at learning it. You took over my mountain and occupied the aura of my cave, and even slandered immortal Xian Huan Zhen Dao. You're a monster. You don't know how to be grateful." Hearing this, Black Water sneered. Grateful? Ridiculous, ridiculous. In ancient times, you self-proclaimed righteous cultivators. How many of you killed us monsters in the tone of killing monsters? We lived in seclusion in the mountains and forests, abiding by the commandments of Lord Dragon King. But you cultivators always try to make us kill you, using all kinds of dirty tricks. You don't look like Taoists at all. You're just like butchers. Black water snake monster's face darkened. Even in modern times, how many mountains and forests have been cut off by you humans? How many rivers have been polluted by you humans? Do you know how many young demons have been hunted by you and fed into your stomachs as delicacies just to satisfy your appetite? Tell me, can the amount of mountains and forests in modern times be compared with that of ancient times? Can the air now be compared with the sun and moon in ancient times? Can the river now be compared with that of 100 years ago? The black water serpent monster waved his sleeve and coldly shouted, "We know our place, but you humans are trying every means to take our place step by step. Now, I'm only taking your mountain, which is far less than what you humans have done. Why can I do it? I've lived here for 10 years. In this shabby Taoist temple, there are at least hundreds of bones of different monster tribes. What do you say, you coward?" I don't know whether this blackwater snake monster is powerful or not, but it looks like he's definitely good at talking. Luochio looked at Yang Taizi, who was so angry that he moved his lips but couldn't find any words to refute. He couldn't help looking at this Taoist temple again. This exquisite and unparalleled turned out to be piled up by countless corpses. But business was business, and Yi had already signed a contract with Yang Taizi. So after hearing Blackwater's words, Yi didn't hesitate to take action. Chapter 183. Genius remembers love in 1 second/little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. The black flame in Yu Ye's hand could burn the palm of the Dragon King mentioned by the Demon Clan. Naturally, It could also burn a mere 350 years old black water demon snake. Yang Taizi used 50 years to severely injure black water snake monster. However, he wasn't sure how serious the injury was. At this time, he was only thinking about fighting. Blind Eye, who looked delicate but was actually extremely terrifying, couldn't hold back her attack. It was as heavy as it could be. Blackwater's expression froze the moment Yi launched her attack. The moment the black flame appeared, a great sense of danger shrouded her heart. How could she be careless when facing such a fierce attack? Blackwater's jade-like hands waved gently outside her sleeves. Her fingers spread out like sprouting twigs. A large amount of air waves spurted out from her fingertips, colliding with the mysterious black smoke in Yuye's hand. Yuye didn't retreat, but moved forward. Her figure flashed in the dense airwaves at an extremely fast speed, appearing in front of Blackwater's eyes in a blink of an eye. Oh! Blackwater crossed her hands, and the airwaves spurted out from her fingertips, interweaved into a big net in front of her, covering the sky and the earth. But in a blink of an eye, the dense big net had been broken from the middle. Those airwaves were like ignited gunpowder, burning crazily at this moment. A soft cry sounded in the air. Blackwater looked down at herself subconsciously. She didn't know when, but a black flame had appeared on her body from her left shoulder to her right waist and across her chest. The black flame burned Blackwater's body, causing a terrible injury. She couldn't even put it out. It was as if in another 10 seconds, her body would be completely burned into ashes by the black flames. But at this moment, the horrible black flame on Blackwater suddenly disappeared, leaving a huge wound on her body. And Yuyi had returned to Luochio's side, standing one step behind him. Miss Maid lowered her eyes, and her hands naturally hung down. She held each other as if she had not moved at all. She was calm and relaxed. Blackwater was seriously injured. He knelt on the ground with one knee, one hand pressing on the bleeding wound. He was still spitting out blood. His eyes were filled with fear. "You're not human. Why are you helping this human Taoist?" "Help!" Yuyi raised her head and smiled. "It's just a deal between Yang Taizi and us. He bought you to be heavily injured, so we'll make you heavily injured. It's a pity that the Taoist you're talking about is a little too meticulous and isn't willing to let us take your life directly." As soon as he finished his words, Yang Taizi had already launched an attack. The old Taoist was indeed someone who knew how to mix in the secular world. He knew how to use the chat group and deeply understood the importance of a last hit. Right now, the black water snake demon had a terrifying wound on its body and was continuously coughing up blood. If they didn't attack now, when would they? The old Taoist priest did not want to waste even a second of his life just because of a serious injury. The wooden sword in Yang Taizi's hand emitted a dim light, emitting a righteous chi of Taoism. It rapidly chopped down from the black water snake demon's head. "Stinky Taoist, even if I'm heavily injured, do you think you can defeat me?" Blackwater's eyes suddenly shone brightly. A huge shadow suddenly broke out behind her. It was a ferocious giant snake. Yang Taizi's wooden sword fiercely chopped on the head of the giant snake shadow, but it seemed to have aroused its ferocious nature. There was a faint roar in the air. Since Yang Taizi was no match for it, he was hit by the snakehead and directly flew to the outside of the deep valley. His disciple Jean Eyre saw this and immediately quivered. He shouted loudly, grabbing the iron chain used to climb up, and pulled it hard. A part of the iron chain swung up and rolled Yang Taizi back. This collision directly broke the wooden sword in Yang Taizi's hand. The old Taoist priest fell to the ground, covering his chest and spitting out a mouthful of blood. His face was as white as paper. As for the Blackwater serpent demon, at this moment, it had already climbed up the cliff at an extremely fast speed. Its two legs transformed into a snake tail, and it slid up the cliff. In the blink of an eye, it was already dozens of meters away, hidden in the thick fog of the valley. The monster who had occupied the mountain for 10 years had escaped. Yang Taizi was furious that he still could not kill Blackwater, even after using 50 years of his life. He looked at Luochio and said angrily, "How could you let her escape? As long as Blackwater is heavily injured, that's the only requirement of the customer. Luaccio replied indifferently. Since there's no other requirement, why should we stop her from leaving? Young Taizi gave a start. You went to buy something, and the shop gave you something, but you asked why the shop didn't give you something else. Are you stupid? But the old Taoist plan was to use the club's power to heavily injure Blackwater Snake Demon and bring her fighting strength down to his level. Then he and his disciple could join hands to defeat her. But now Blackwater escaped. Wouldn't the 50 years of life be wasted? Young Taizi suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, falling down slowly. Oh, he was actually heavily injured. My plan was ruined. Master, 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 don't scare me. Master. Jean-Eyre held young Taizi, who had passed away with his eyes closed, fearing that he would die tonight. His eyes turned red. He won't die. Luaccio came forward and took a look. He just fainted because of anger. If you want him to wake up quickly, splash him with water, or let him sleep for a while. Oh. Jean-Eyre nodded. I'll let Master wake up naturally. The deal was to severely injure Blackwater. The next step was to take young Taizi's lifespan. But Luaccio didn't seem to be in a hurry. He looked thoughtfully at the floating Taoist temple and walked in. Miss Maid was about to follow him, but Luaccio waved his hand. Wait for me here, I'll go in myself. Just now, when Yi attacked Blackwater, Luaccio faintly felt that something in the temple was calling him. Not long after, young Taizi slowly woke up. The old Taoist's face was still pale, but he saw Miss Maid was overlooking the surrounding scenery and didn't seem to notice him. But she was still here, which meant she was waiting for him to pay. Young Taizi instantly knew he was in trouble. What a loss. Master, you're awake. How do you feel? Do you want to drink water? Jean-Eyre hurriedly asked. Young Taizi couldn't wait to give this silly apprentice a knock on his head. Why did you speak so loudly? Are you afraid that others don't know I've woken up? Young Taizi didn't say a word, closing his eyes quickly. Master, why did you faint again? Master. Jean-Eyre kept shaking young Taizi's body. Stop shaking. I'm your apprentice. You idiot. Young Taizi couldn't help wailing loudly in his heart. Miss Maid glanced at him casually, then continued to look at the surrounding scenery, sighing in her heart. No wonder he's Tianzi's disciple.